Good day, lovely viewers. Welcome to Fiction Moon. We have an exciting story lined up for you today. What if Harry saved the Goblin King's life at age 5 and was granted the rank of Supreme Overlord? Your engagement means the world to us. Like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow and bring you more amazing content. Without wasting any time, let's start. Chapter 1, Blood Oath. The cupboard under the stairs was dark except for the thin strip of light that crept beneath the door. 5-year-old Harry Potter sat cross-legged on his thin mattress, fingers tracing patterns in the dust. His stomach growled. Aunt Petunia had sent him to bed without dinner again, this time because a glass had shattered when Dudley shoved him against the cabinet. "I didn't even touch it," Harry whispered to a small spider crawling along the sloped ceiling. The spider, like all the other occupants of number 4 Privet Drive, offered no comfort. Sleep wouldn't come. Harry waited until the house fell silent, Uncle Vernon's snores rumbling through the floorboards above, before carefully testing his cupboard door. Sometimes they forgot to lock it. Tonight was one of those nights. The door creaked open, and Harry slipped out, his oversized hand-me-down pajamas whispering against the hardwood floor. The kitchen was his destination. Maybe there would be scraps from dinner he could salvage. As he passed the living room, something caught his eye, a flicker of movement by the back garden door. Harry froze. It wasn't his aunt or uncle. It wasn't even human-sized. A small figure stood examining the lock, bathed in moonlight streaming through the glass panes. Barely taller than Harry himself, the creature had long, pointed ears, a dome-shaped head, and fingers that seemed too long for its body. It muttered something in a language Harry didn't understand, and the door handle glowed briefly. Harry's breath caught. The creature turned, its dark eyes reflecting the moonlight like polished stones. They stared at each other in mutual surprise. "You're not supposed to be awake," the creature said in perfect English, its voice a gravelly whisper. "Neither are you," Harry replied before he could stop himself. The creature's mouth twitched, almost a smile. True enough. A car's headlights swept across the room as it turned onto Privet Drive. The creature ducked away from the window, cursing in that strange language again. "They're coming," it hissed, glancing frantically around the room. "Hide me, human child." Harry didn't think, he acted. "This way," he whispered, leading the strange visitor to his cupboard. They barely made it inside before the front door opened, voices drifting in from outside. "Can't believe Diggle would be so careless," a man was saying. "The detection charm was quite specific," replied a woman's voice. "Unauthorized magic in a Muggle dwelling. With the Potter boy here, we can't be too careful." Harry's eyes widened at the mention of his name. The creature beside him had gone completely still, barely breathing. "Check the back." "I'll take upstairs," the man said. Footsteps approached the living room. Harry's heart pounded. Without thinking, he threw his blanket over the creature and whispered, "Stay still. I'll talk to them." He slipped out of the cupboard just as a tall figure entered the living room. In the darkness, Harry could make out a long cloak and what looked like a wooden stick in the person's hand. "Hello," Harry said softly. "Are you looking for someone?" The figure spun, pointing the stick directly at Harry. "Lumos," the man muttered, and the tip of the stick illuminated, casting a pale glow over them both. Harry gasped. The man wore deep purple robes embroidered with silver stars. He had a long beard and half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose. "Harry Potter," the man said, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing awake at this hour?" I heard a noise," Harry said, thinking quickly. "I thought it might be my aunt." The man lowered his wand slightly, studying Harry with piercing blue eyes. "I see. And did you happen to notice anything unusual tonight, Harry?" Harry shook his head, hoping his face didn't betray the lie. "No, sir. Just noises." "Albus," called the woman's voice from the kitchen. "The back door's been tampered with. Goblin magic, if I'm not mistaken." The bearded man, Albus, frowned. "Stay here, Harry," he instructed, moving toward the kitchen. The moment he was out of sight, Harry darted back to the cupboard and slipped inside. The creature had pushed itself into the farthest corner, eyes glittering in the darkness. "They're looking for you," Harry whispered. "Why?" "Not your concern, human child," the creature replied. "But you have my gratitude for the hiding place." Harry heard footsteps returning. "They're coming back," he warned. "Stay here until they're gone. I'll keep them away." Before the creature could respond, Harry slipped out again, closing the door behind him. He walked toward the kitchen where the adults were examining the back door. "I think I heard something upstairs," Harry said, drawing their attention. "Like footsteps." The woman turned. She wore emerald green robes and had her gray hair pulled into a tight bun. "Upstairs, you say?" Harry nodded earnestly. "Minerva, check again," Albus said. "I'll stay with Harry." As the woman headed upstairs, Albus knelt to Harry's level. "It's rather unusual for a boy your age to be wandering about at night," he said gently. Harry fidgeted with the hem of his oversized pajama top. "I get hungry sometimes." Something flickered across the old man's face, concern, perhaps. "Do the Dursleys not feed you enough, Harry?" Harry looked at his bare feet. He'd learned early that complaining about the Dursleys only made things worse. Albus seemed to understand his silence. He waved his stick, wand, and a small chocolate appeared in his palm. "Perhaps this might help with the hunger," he offered. Harry took it cautiously. "Thank you, sir." "You're welcome, Harry." His blue eyes twinkled kindly. "Now, I think it's best you return to bed. We'll make sure there are no more noises tonight." Harry nodded, clutching the chocolate. As he turned toward his cupboard, Albus asked, "Aren't your quarters upstairs, Harry?" Harry froze. Nothing upstairs, Albus," Minerva reported, descending the stairs. But, her eyes fell on Harry, narrowing slightly. "Mr. Potter, where exactly do you sleep?" Harry swallowed hard. He'd never told anyone about the cupboard. Uncle Vernon had made it clear what would happen if he did. "I have a room," he said vaguely. "Show us," Albus said, his voice gentle but firm. Harry hesitated, then slowly walked to his cupboard. He could almost feel the creature tense on the other side of the thin door. With a deep breath, he pointed. "Here," he said simply. "A storage cupboard?" Minerva's voice was sharp with disbelief. Albus stepped forward and opened the door. Harry's heart hammered, but when the light from Albus's wand illuminated the small space, it revealed only his mattress, ragged blanket, and a few broken toy soldiers. The creature was gone. "Merlin's beard," Minerva whispered. "Albus, you said he would be safe here. You never said he would be treated like a house elf," Albus finished grimly. He turned to Harry, his expression troubled. "How long have you slept here, Harry?" "Always," Harry answered. "As long as I can remember." The adults exchanged a glance charged with meaning Harry couldn't decipher. "We have more to discuss than I thought," Albus said. "But not tonight. The magical disturbance seems to have disappeared, and young Harry needs his rest." He placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. "We will be checking on you again soon, Harry. Very soon." After the strange visitors left, Harry returned to his cupboard, baffled by their disappearance but even more confused by the creature's absence. Had he imagined the whole thing? Then his fingers brushed something cool and metallic on his pillow. A small gold coin, marked with symbols he'd never seen before. Underneath was a scrap of parchment with spidery writing, "Blood debt owed. Nagnok will return." Harry clutched the coin, a strange warmth spreading through him. For the first time in his young life, he felt like something extraordinary might be about to happen. 3 nights later, Harry was awakened by a soft tapping on his cupboard door. He sat up, instantly alert. The house was silent except for the distant rumble of Uncle Vernon's snores. The tapping came again, more insistent. "Who's there?" Harry whispered. "You helped Nagnok," came the gravelly whisper he recognized from before. "Now open the door, human child." Harry pushed the door open to find not one but three of the strange creatures standing in the hallway. The one in the center, slightly taller and wearing what looked like a golden circlet around his dome-shaped head, stepped forward. "I am Nagnok," he said with quiet authority. "You sheltered me from wizard authorities 3 nights past." "They were wizards?" Harry asked, eyes widening. "With real magic?" The creature, Nagnok, narrowed his eyes. "You don't know." He studied Harry more carefully, taking in the lightning-shaped scar partially hidden beneath his unruly hair. "Curious. Most curious." "What are you?" Harry asked. "We are goblins," replied Nagnok. "I am king of the Garthel clan, ruler of the western territories beneath London." Harry blinked. "Goblins are real?" One of the other goblins snorted. "Humans," he muttered. "Always the same." "Silence, Griphook," Nagnok commanded. He turned back to Harry. "You saved my life, human child. Had those wizards captured me outside their protective boundaries, the consequences would have been severe." "I didn't do much," Harry said, shrugging. "You did enough," Nagnok countered. "And goblins pay their debts. I've come to offer you something no human has been offered in 8 centuries. The third goblin shifted uncomfortably. "My king, reconsider. He is just a human child. And Potter, no less." "My decision is made, Silver Axe," Nagnok said firmly. He fixed his dark eyes on Harry again. "I offer you protection of the Goblin Nation. More than that, I offer you the rank of Supreme Overlord." Harry stared blankly. "What's that mean?" Nagnok's mouth twitched in that almost smile again. "It means, young Harry Potter, that you would have a place among us. Training. Knowledge. Power beyond what these," he gestured dismissively around the Dursley home, "could ever provide." "You know my name," Harry said, surprised. "Of course. The boy who lived. The one who vanquished the Dark Lord." Nagnok tilted his head. "Yet they keep you in a cupboard." Harry looked down, embarrassed. "I'm not special." "Evidence suggests otherwise," Nagnok said. "Come with us tonight. See the world beneath the world. Then decide." Harry hesitated. The Dursleys would be furious if he disappeared. But they'd be asleep for hours yet, and the chance to see real magic, to learn about goblins. "I'll come," he decided. "But I have to be back before morning." Nagnok nodded once. "Agreed." Harry pulled on his oversized sneakers and followed the goblins through the silent house. They exited through the back door, Nagnok touching it with one long finger and murmuring in that strange language, making the lock click open. The night air was cool on Harry's face as they crossed the garden and slipped through a gap in the fence. Beyond Privet Drive, a sleek black car waited, its windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb the streetlight. "Goblins drive cars?" Harry asked, surprised. Griphook opened the rear door. "We adapt," he said simply. The interior was larger than seemed possible from outside. Harry sat between Griphook and Silver Axe, with Nagnok opposite. No driver was visible, yet the car moved smoothly away from the curb. "Where are we going?" Harry asked as the familiar streets of Little Whinging gave way to the motorway. "Gringotts," Nagnok replied. "The Wizard Bank. Our public face in the magical world." "Magical world?" Harry repeated. "There's a whole world of magic." Silver Axe gave Nagnok a pointed look. "He knows nothing." "Then he shall learn," Nagnok said. He leaned forward, studying Harry intently. "Tell me, young one, has anything strange ever happened around you?" Things you couldn't explain. Harry thought of the vanishing glass at the zoo, his hair growing back overnight after Aunt Petunia had cut it terribly short, the time he'd somehow ended up on the school roof when Dudley's gang was chasing him. Sometimes, he admitted. But I never meant to do it. Of course not. Untrained magic often manifests in moments of strong emotion. Nagnok sat back. You are a wizard, Harry Potter. As were your parents before you. My parents? Harry's heart raced. But Aunt Petunia said they died in a car crash. The goblins exchanged dark looks. A car crash, Griphook repeated, disgust evident in his tone. Is that what those muggles told you? Muggles? Non-magical humans, Nagnok explained. And no, Harry Potter. Your parents did not die in a mundane accident. They were murdered by the most feared dark wizard of our time. A wizard so terrible that most still fear to speak his name. Harry's mouth went dry. Who? Who killed them? His name was Voldemort, Nagnok said, ignoring Silverac's flinch. He came to your home when you were but an infant. He killed your father first, then your mother. But when he tried to kill you, something happened. His power broke. Some say he died that night, but goblins know better. Nagnok's dark eyes gleamed. He is diminished, but not gone. Harry touched his scar unconsciously. And this? Did he give me this? Yes, Nagnok confirmed. The mark of a killing curse that somehow rebounded. You are the only human ever known to have survived it, Harry Potter. That is why you are famous in the wizarding world. Famous? Harry shook his head in disbelief. But I'm nobody. Just Harry. To the goblins, there is no just about you, Nagnok said. You saved a Goblin King without thought of reward. And now you shall see our world. The car had entered London, weaving through progressively narrower streets until it stopped in a shadowy alley beside an old-fashioned pub. A sign swinging in the breeze read, "The Leaky Cauldron," though Harry noticed pedestrians walking past without giving it a second glance. Muggle-repelling charms, Griphook explained, noting Harry's observation. They cannot see what their minds refuse to accept. They entered through a side door, avoiding the pub itself, and emerged into a small courtyard. Nagnok approached the brick wall at the far end, tapped a specific pattern with one long finger, and stepped back as the bricks rearranged themselves to form an archway. Harry gasped. Beyond lay a winding cobblestone street lined with the strangest shops he'd ever seen, windows displaying everything from cauldrons to broomsticks to what looked like actual dragon livers. Diagon Alley, Nagnok announced. The wizard's marketplace. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows. Few people were about at this hour, but those who were gave the goblin party a wide berth, shooting curious glances at the small human child in their midst. At the street's far end stood an imposing white marble building. Gringotts, Silverac said with evident pride. Finest wizarding bank in Britain. They bypassed the main entrance, slipping instead through a small bronze door on the building's flank. Inside, the corridors were lit with flickering torches that cast long shadows across the marble floors. Goblins in scarlet and gold uniforms nodded respectfully to Nagnok as they passed. After several twisting passageways and a dizzying ride in a cart that plunged deep underground, they arrived at a massive stone door inscribed with runes. Nagnok placed his palm against it, and the runes glowed briefly before the door swung silently open. Beyond lay a vast cavern, its ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Hundreds of goblins worked at forges and anvils, hammering metal that gleamed with more than natural light. Others huddled over tables, examining jewels or poring over parchments covered in complex calculations. The Great Forge, Nagnok said, a note of pride in his gravelly voice. Heart of goblin civilization beneath London. Harry stared in wonder. It's amazing. This is merely the outer chamber, Nagnok replied. What I wish to show you lies deeper still. They continued through the bustling forge, drawing curious stares from the working goblins. Many bowed to Nagnok, but their eyes lingered on Harry with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "They don't like humans," Harry observed quietly. "We have reason to mistrust wizards," Griphook said. "Centuries of broken treaties and stolen artifacts have taught us caution. Yet here you are, bringing a wizard child to our sacred halls," said a voice from the shadows. A goblin stepped into their path, older than the others, with a long white beard and eyes clouded with age. He leaned on a staff topped with a glowing red stone. Elder Garrick, Nagnok greeted him with a respectful nod. "This is different. This child saved my life." The elder goblin circled Harry, studying him with those milky eyes that somehow still seemed to see everything. "Potter," he finally said. "Son of James and Lily. The boy who reflected the killing curse." He tapped Harry's scar with one gnarled finger. "Dark magic lingers here." Harry stepped back, alarmed. "What do you mean?" Elder Garrick ignored the question, addressing Nagnok instead. "You intend to grant him the Overlord status?" "I do," Nagnok confirmed. "It has not been done since, I know our history," Nagnok interrupted. "The decision is made." Elder Garrick's expression was unreadable. "Then it shall be witnessed." He struck his staff against the stone floor, and the sound echoed through the cavern. Activity ceased as every goblin turned toward them. "Follow," the elder instructed, turning toward a narrow passage at the cavern's far side. They proceeded in silence, descending deeper beneath London. The air grew warmer, tinged with the smell of sulfur and something metallic. Finally, they emerged into a smaller chamber, perfectly circular, with a raised dais at its center. By now, dozens of goblins had followed them, forming a ring around the chamber's perimeter. Their expressions were solemn, expectant. "The Chamber of Bonds," Nagnok explained to Harry. "Where our most sacred oaths are sworn." Elder Garrick took position on one side of the dais. Nagnok gestured for Harry to join him on the platform. "What's happening?" Harry whispered, suddenly nervous. "A ritual," Nagnok replied. "One that will bind us by blood and magic. It has been 8 centuries since a human was granted what I offer you now." "What exactly am I agreeing to?" Nagnok's expression softened slightly. "You gain the protection and knowledge of the Goblin Nation. Access to our magic, our training, our wealth. In return, you become a bridge between our worlds. Neither fully goblin nor fully wizard, but something new. Something potentially powerful enough to change the course of both societies." Harry swallowed. "That sounds important." "It is," Silveraxe interjected. "Too important for a child." "Yet it must be a child," Elder Garrick countered. "Only one whose magic is still forming can truly bond with goblin ways." He fixed those cloudy eyes on Harry. "The question is whether this child is worthy." Harry squared his shoulders. "I don't know if I'm worthy. But I want to learn. I want to know about my parents, about magic. About all of this." He gestured to the cavern around them. A murmur ran through the watching goblins. "Well spoken," Nagnok said. He drew a small, jeweled dagger from his belt. "The ritual requires blood freely given. Are you willing?" Harry hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Then we begin." Nagnok raised his voice to address the assembled goblins. "Witnesses of the Garthel clan, I, Nagnok, 16th of my line, King of Western Territories, call upon the ancient right of blood debt. This human child, Harry James Potter, saved my life without thought of reward or recognition. By the old laws, I name him Supreme Overlord of the Goblin Nation." Shocked whispers erupted around the chamber. Silveraxe stepped forward. "My king, I must formally object. The title has lain dormant since the Wizard Wars. To resurrect it now, for a human child, your objection is noted, War Chief," Nagnok said firmly. "And overruled." Elder Garrick struck his staff against the dais. The king has invoked blood debt. The ancient laws are clear. Let any who challenge this step forward now. The chamber fell silent. Then it shall be done, the elder declared. He produced a golden bowl from within his robes and placed it on a pedestal that rose from the center of the dais. Nagnok turned to Harry. The ritual is simple but binding. 3 drops of your blood will mingle with mine in the bowl of oaths. Words will be spoken. Magic will recognize the bond. Will it hurt? Harry asked. The cut, briefly. The magic, that depends on you. Harry nodded, extending his hand. Nagnok made a small, precise cut across his palm. Harry winced but didn't pull away as 3 drops of his blood fell into the golden bowl. Nagnok then cut his own palm, adding 3 drops of goblin blood that appeared darker, almost black against the gold. Elder Garrick began to chant in the goblin language, his voice rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed to vibrate through the stone beneath their feet. The blood in the bowl began to swirl of its own accord, the red and black merging into a shimmering purple. Repeat after me, Nagnok instructed Harry. I, Harry James Potter. I, Harry James Potter. Accept the title of Supreme Overlord. Accept the title of Supreme Overlord. Binding myself to the Goblin Nation by blood and magic. As Harry repeated the phrases, the purple liquid in the bowl began to glow, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. The air thickened, charged with power that made the hairs on Harry's arms stand on end. To protect its secrets, honor its traditions, and uphold its justice. Harry's voice grew stronger with each line, even as the magic in the chamber intensified. Until death claims me or the debt is repaid. Until death claims me or the debt is repaid, Harry finished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the liquid in the bowl flashed blindingly bright. A surge of magic rushed through Harry, not painful exactly, but overwhelming, like being plunged into an icy lake. He gasped, dropping to one knee. Images flooded his mind, vast underground cities, goblin warriors in gleaming armor, mountains of gold and gems, strange runes that shifted and changed as he tried to focus on them. As suddenly as it began, the sensation receded. Harry found himself still kneeling on the dais, breathing hard. When he looked up, the assembled goblins had all dropped to one knee, heads bowed, all except Nagnok and Elder Garrick. Rise, Supreme Overlord, Nagnok said formally. Harry stood shakily. Did it work? In answer, Elder Garrick gestured to a polished metal mirror on the chamber wall. Harry moved to stand before it and gasped. His appearance was mostly unchanged, but his eyes, once simply green, now held flecks of gold that seemed to shift and gleam in the torchlight. More startling, a faint pattern of silvery lines had appeared on his skin, tracing his veins from his heart outward before fading at his wrists and neck. Goblin magic has marked you, Elder Garrick explained. The patterns will fade from sight within the hour, but the changes they represent are permanent. What changes? Harry asked, watching the silvery lines pulse slightly with his heartbeat. Enhanced connection to metal and stone. Resistance to certain forms of magic. Improved night vision. The elder goblin's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. And, of course, the right to command in times of need. Harry turned back to Nagnok. Command? I don't want to command anyone. A wise start, Nagnok replied. The title is largely ceremonial in peacetime. But it grants you access to knowledge and training no human has received in centuries. He gestured to Griphook. My advisor will be your primary teacher. You will return here 3 nights each week for instruction. But the Dursleys need not know, Nagnok finished. Goblin magic can ensure your absence goes unnoticed. Silverax stepped forward, his expression still guarded but less hostile. I will oversee your combat training, human. Do not expect special treatment. Harry nodded, a strange excitement building in his chest. When do we start? Tonight, Nagnok said. But first, a gift befitting your new station. He clapped his hands, and a younger goblin hurried forward carrying a small wooden box. Nagnok opened it to reveal a silver band etched with runes similar to those on the chamber door. An arm ring, he explained. Symbol of your rank, and a focus for goblin magic. It will remain invisible to Muggle eyes. He placed the band around Harry's right bicep, where it adjusted itself to fit perfectly. The metal was cool against Harry's skin, but quickly warmed, seeming to pulse faintly in time with his heart. Now, Nagnok said, your first lesson begins. The weeks that followed were the strangest and most wonderful of Harry's young life. 3 nights each week, goblin guards would appear silently outside his cupboard after the Dursleys were asleep. They would escort him through magical passages that seemed to bend space itself, emerging deep beneath London in minutes rather than hours. Griphook taught him goblin history and language, the basics of metalworking, and the complex financial systems that made Gringotts the backbone of wizarding economy. Harry proved an apt pupil, particularly in the language, something Griphook attributed to the blood oath magic enhancing his linguistic abilities. Silverax's combat training was brutal but effective. Harry learned to wield a short sword designed for his small frame, to throw specialized daggers that returned to his hand, and most importantly, to evade attacks from larger opponents. Wizards rely too heavily on their wands, Silverax growled during one particularly grueling session. Take the wand, take the wizard. Harry had collapsed onto a stone bench, muscles aching. But I don't have a wand. Not yet, Silverax conceded. But when you do, you will not be defenseless without it. That is the goblin way. Perhaps most fascinating were his lessons with Elder Garrick in goblin magic. Unlike wizard magic, which relied primarily on wands and spoken incantations, goblin magic centered on the inherent properties of metals and stones, enhanced through runes and blood-forged connections. Your silver lines give you an advantage, Elder Garrick explained, demonstrating how to activate a simple light rune by touch. Your magic flows more easily into the material world. Harry practiced for hours, learning to channel his innate magical energy through the silver armband, causing runes to glow, metals to heat or cool, and in one memorable lesson, making a small silver coin hover above his palm. Wandless magic, Elder Garrick had remarked with satisfaction. Most wizard adults cannot manage even this simple feat. At the Dursleys, Harry's life remained largely unchanged, chores, Dudley's bullying, meals that never quite satisfied his growing appetite. But the knowledge that his real life happened elsewhere made it all more bearable. The goblins provided food during his visits, rich meats and strange fungi that grew only in the deep caverns, ensuring he didn't suffer the malnutrition that might otherwise have resulted from the Dursleys' neglect. More importantly, Harry learned about his parents. Not from the goblins directly, but from the records they kept. Your father came from old money, Griphook explained one night, showing Harry the Potter family ledger. Not the wealthiest wizarding family, but respected. Your mother was Muggle-born, no magical parents, but powerful in her own right. What were they like? Harry asked. As people? Griphook hesitated. Goblins do not socialize with wizards often. But your father was known for his loyalty to friends. Your mother for her fierce intelligence. It wasn't much, but it was more than Harry had ever known before, and he cherished every detail. Months passed. Harry's 6th birthday came and went, unmarked by the Dursleys but celebrated in the Goblin Forge with a feast and the gift of a small silver dagger, his first proper goblin-made weapon. By his 7th birthday, Harry could converse fluently in gobbledygook, the goblin language. He had mastered basic metalworking, could identify 20 different precious gems by touch alone, and had developed reflexes that regularly allowed him to dodge Silverax's surprise attacks. His physical appearance began to change too. Though still small for his age, a result of years of inadequate nutrition, his body had become wiry and tough. He moved differently, with a fluid grace that seemed at odds with his baggy hand-me-down clothes. And though the silver lines were normally invisible, they would appear briefly when he channeled goblin magic, tracing patterns across his skin like living tattoos. On Harry's 8th birthday, Nagnok himself presented him with a more substantial gift, a small vault of his own within Gringotts. Not your family vault, the Goblin King clarified. That remains sealed until you come of age in wizard terms. But this will give you independence when you eventually rejoin wizard society more fully. Do I have to? Harry asked. Rejoin them, I mean. Nagnok's expression grew serious. It is your destiny, Supreme Overlord. Your parents' murderer is not truly gone. One day, you will be needed in that world. Harry fingered the silver armband, which had grown with him over the years. Will I have to choose between worlds? That, Nagnok said, is the challenge of your position. You are the bridge, the first in centuries. How you balance those roles will shape both our futures. On the eve of Harry's 11th birthday, he sat cross-legged on a flat stone in one of the deeper caverns, eyes closed in concentration. Before him lay a small iron bar, unworked and plain. His task, to shape it using only goblin magic, without physical tools. Elder Garrick watched from nearby, his cloudy eyes somehow still missing nothing. Focus on the metal's nature, he instructed. Iron remembers fire. It yearns to be molded. Harry reached out with his senses, feeling the cool solidity of the iron. He channeled his magic through the silver armband, directing it into the bar. Slowly, the metal began to glow red, then white-hot, though no actual flame touched it. Sweat beaded on Harry's forehead as he visualized the shape he wanted, a simple key. The iron responded, flowing like thick honey, stretching and narrowing at one end, forming teeth at the other. When he finally opened his eyes, a perfectly formed iron key lay on the stone, still faintly glowing. Harry exhaled slowly, fatigue washing over him. Well done, Elder Garrick said, rare approval in his voice. Few goblins master heat shaping before their 20th year. Harry picked up the key once it had cooled. What does it open? That depends on what you key it to, the elder replied. A door, a chest, a secret. The magic recognizes your intent. Their lesson was interrupted by the arrival of Griphook, looking uncharacteristically agitated. Supreme Overlord, he said formally. King Nagnok requests your immediate presence in the upper chambers. Harry exchanged a glance with Elder Garrick, who nodded permission. He pocketed the iron key and followed Griphook through the winding passages. They emerged not in the great forge as usual, but in a richly appointed office on the upper levels of Gringotts. Nagnok stood behind a massive desk of polished obsidian, examining what appeared to be a letter written on yellowed parchment. Ah, Harry, he said, dispensing with formality. Your Hogwarts letter has arrived. Harry's heart jumped. He had known this day would come, his 11th birthday marking his official entry into the wizarding world, but the reality of it still startled him. Already? He asked, taking the heavy envelope Nagnok offered. The address was written in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. They know where I sleep, Harry observed, breaking the purple wax seal. Magical quills record the locations of magical children, Nagnok explained. A system dating back to the founders of Hogwarts. Harry unfolded the parchment and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeed, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, Dumbledore, Harry murmured. The man with the beard. From that night. Indeed, Nagnok said. A powerful wizard, and not one to be underestimated. He drummed his long fingers on the desktop. This presents both opportunity and challenge, Supreme Overlord. Your return to the wizarding world must be handled carefully. Harry skimmed the equipment list. Wand, cauldron, robes. I'll need money for my vault. That is the least of our concerns, Nagnok said, waving a dismissive hand. More pressing is how to maintain your dual identity. Few wizards would accept a goblin-trained supreme overlord in their midst. You want me to hide what I am? Harry asked, frowning. Not hide, Nagnok corrected. Strategically reveal. The armband will remain invisible to all but those you wish to see it. Your goblin magic can be practiced in private. Your knowledge of our ways shared only with those who prove worthy of trust. Griphook, who had remained by the door, cleared his throat. There is also the matter of your escort, Supreme Overlord. The school traditionally sends someone to assist Muggle-raised students with their first visit to Diagon Alley. Harry looked between the two goblins. I don't need an escort. I've been coming here for years. Yes, but officially, you are an ordinary wizard child raised by Muggles, ignorant of our world, Nagnok reminded him. It would seem suspicious if you declined their assistance or appeared too knowledgeable. Harry sighed. So I have to pretend I've never seen Diagon Alley or Gringotts before. Precisely, Nagnok confirmed. Play the wide-eyed innocent. Let them guide you. Meanwhile, we will ensure your true education continues at Hogwarts. How? Harry asked. I'll be at school in Scotland. Nagnok's mouth curved in that not-quite smile. Gringotts has branches everywhere, Supreme Overlord. Including Hogsmeade Village, just beyond the school grounds. Arrangements have been made. Harry nodded, a mixture of excitement and apprehension churning in his stomach. For 6 years, the Goblin Nation had been his secret world, his true home. Now he would have to navigate a new environment while concealing half of who he had become. There is one more thing, Nagnok said, opening a drawer in the obsidian desk. He removed a small velvet pouch. A birthday gift. From all of us. Harry accepted the pouch, feeling something small and hard inside. He tipped it into his palm, a golden signet ring bearing the symbol of crossed keys over a mountain. The seal of the Supreme Overlord, Nagnok explained. Last worn 8 centuries ago by Ulrich the Unyielding. It is enchanted to appear as a simple band to wizard eyes unless you wish otherwise. Harry slipped it onto his right index finger, where it adjusted itself to fit perfectly, just as the arm band had years before. A warm tingle spread up his arm as the ring connected with his goblin magic. Thank you, he said sincerely, looking between Nagnok and Griphook. For everything. I won't let you down. See that you don't, Nagnok replied, though his tone held no real threat. Now, we should return you to Privet Drive. I suspect your official Hogwarts escort will arrive tomorrow, and you should appear to have been there all along. As they left the office, Harry found himself torn between worlds in a way he'd never felt before. For 6 years, he'd been Supreme Overlord Harry, student of goblin ways. Now he would have to become just Harry Potter again, at least on the surface. But as his fingers brushed against the iron key in his pocket, the key he'd shaped with goblin magic, he smiled. He would find a way to bridge his 2 worlds. After all, that's what a Supreme Overlord was meant to do. The morning of Harry's 11th birthday dawned bright and clear. He'd been returned to Privet Drive just before dawn, slipping back into his cupboard unnoticed. The Dursleys, of course, made no mention of his birthday. Uncle Vernon complained about the bills. Aunt Petunia gossiped about the neighbors. Dudley demanded more bacon. Just another ordinary day at number 4 Privet Drive, until the mail arrived. Get the mail, Dudley, Uncle Vernon said from behind his newspaper. Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Harry went to the front door, knowing what he would find. Sure enough, among the bills and postcards lay a familiar yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green ink. He hesitated only briefly before returning to the kitchen and handing Uncle Vernon the other mail while keeping his Hogwarts letter. What's that you've got there, boy? Uncle Vernon barked, noticing the envelope in Harry's hand. My letter, Harry replied simply. Who'd be writing to you? Uncle Vernon scoffed, but his expression changed dramatically as he caught sight of the wax seal. His face went from red to green faster than a traffic light. P.P. Petunia. What followed was a chaotic scene Harry hadn't fully anticipated. Vernon tore the letter from his hands. Petunia looked like she might faint. Dudley, naturally, demanded to see the letter himself. "It's mine," Harry protested with genuine indignation. Despite knowing what the letter contained, he hadn't expected the Dursleys to actually confiscate it. "Out! All of you!" Uncle Vernon shouted, stuffing the letter back into its envelope. Harry found himself unceremoniously shoved from the kitchen, along with Dudley, who was complaining loudly. They engaged in a brief, silent struggle to see who could listen through the keyhole, which Harry lost. He resigned himself to listening at the crack under the door instead. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house?" "Watching, spying, might be following us," Uncle Vernon muttered wildly. "But what should we do? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want?" Harry suppressed a smile. The Dursleys had no idea he'd already received his letter officially through Gringotts. This performance was merely for their benefit, to maintain his cover as an ordinary Muggle-raised boy. That evening, Harry was surprised when Uncle Vernon visited his cupboard, something that had never happened before. "Where's my letter?" Harry asked the moment his uncle squeezed through the door. "It was addressed to you by mistake," Uncle Vernon said shortly. "I have burned it." "It wasn't a mistake," Harry replied, knowing he was pushing boundaries but unable to help himself. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" Uncle Vernon yelled, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced his face into a smile that looked quite painful. Yes, Harry, about this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking, you're really getting a bit big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom." Harry blinked in surprise. This was unexpected. The goblins had taught him to analyze situations quickly, and he immediately recognized this as the Dursleys' attempt to thwart whoever was sending the letters by changing his sleeping location. "Why?" he asked, playing his role of suspicious child. "Don't ask questions," his uncle snapped. "Take this stuff upstairs, now." The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister, Marge, one where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It took Harry just one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to his new room. As he sat on the bed that night, Harry ran his fingers over the silver armband, momentarily allowing it to become visible in the moonlight. Its runes glowed faintly, comforting in their familiarity. On his finger, the golden signet ring caught the light. These tangible connections to his other life reassured him that the past 6 years hadn't been a dream. More letters arrived over the following days, each destroyed by Uncle Vernon with increasing panic. Harry watched with well-concealed amusement as the letters found their way into increasingly improbable places, inside eggs, through the bathroom window, rolled up inside each of the 24 eggs their very confused milkman had handed Aunt Petunia. Finally, on Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but happy. "No post on Sundays," he reminded them cheerfully. "No damn letters today." Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney and caught him sharply on the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to catch one, a performance he put on mainly to maintain his cover. "Out! Out!" Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floor. "That does it," said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. "I want you all back here in 5 minutes ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments. He looked so dangerous with half his mustache missing that no one dared argue. 10 minutes later they had wrenched their way through the boarded-up doors and were in the car, speeding toward the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. They drove. And drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. "Shake 'em off, shake 'em off," he would mutter whenever he did this. Harry remained silent throughout the journey. His goblin training had taught him patience and observation. Besides, he knew his Hogwarts acceptance was already confirmed. This was merely a formality, though he did wonder how far the Dursleys would go in their desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable. The answer came as they reached the coast. Uncle Vernon, looking thoroughly pleased with himself, led them to a small, miserable-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city. After a night in musty sheets, eating stale cornflakes for breakfast, they were off again. This time, Uncle Vernon took them to a remote shack on a rock in the sea, accessible only by a small boat. A storm was brewing as they made their way across the choppy water. "Storm forecast for tonight," Uncle Vernon said gleefully, clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came ambling up to them, pointing, with a rather wicked grin, at an old rowboat bobbing in the iron-grey water below them. "I've already got us some rations," Uncle Vernon continued, "so all aboard." The shack was freezing. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's rations turned out to be a bag of chips each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire but the empty chip bags just smoked and shriveled up. "Could do with some of those letters now, he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, but the thought didn't upset him as it would have a regular 11-year-old who had just discovered the wizarding world. He knew that if Hogwarts truly wanted to reach him, no remote shack would prevent it. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Spray from the high waves spattered the walls of the hut and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went to the lumpy bed next door, leaving Harry to find the softest bit of floor he could and curl up under the thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm raged more and more ferociously as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Low light glinted off the signet ring on his finger. Harry briefly considered using some goblin magic to warm himself. A simple heat rune would do the trick, but decided against it. Too risky, even in these circumstances. Besides, he'd endured worse in his training with Silver Axe. As midnight approached, Harry found himself counting down to his official birthday. 3 minutes to go. 2 minutes. 1 minute. Boom. The whole shack shivered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. Boom. They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now Harry knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause. Then, smash. The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup o' tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." Harry suppressed a smile. His Hogwarts escort had arrived. Chapter 2, Forged and Fire. Diagon Alley thrummed with the usual preterm energy, children darting between shops, parents consulting school lists, owls swooping overhead with last-minute deliveries. But when the grand bronze doors of Gringotts swung open that August morning, the customary bustle faltered. Harry Potter emerged flanked by 2 armored goblin guards, their ceremonial halberds gleaming in the summer sun. Behind him walked Griphook, dressed in formal goblin attire rather than the usual Gringotts uniform. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers rippling outward like stones dropped in still water. "It's Harry Potter. Why's he with the goblins? Are those guards?" Harry kept his expression neutral, just as Nagnok had instructed. Remember, the Goblin King had said that morning, "They will see what they expect, a miraculous savior returning to his rightful place. Let them look. Reveal nothing." Hagrid waited by flourish and blots, towering above the crowd. His beetle-black eyes widened at Harry's unusual entourage. "Blimey, Harry. Didn't expect ya to arrive with company." "Hello, Hagrid," Harry said warmly. "Sorry for the confusion. King Nagnok insisted on an escort for my first official visit to the alley." He gestured to Griphook. "This is account manager Griphook. He's been helping me understand my family accounts." Hagrid's brow furrowed beneath his wild hair. "Account manager? But I thought," he stopped, clearly reconsidering his words. "Dumbledore didn't mention." Griphook stepped forward with a formal bow. "Rubius Hagrid. Gringotts recognizes your role as Hogwarts ambassador. However, as Mr. Potter has already visited his vaults and claimed his heir rings, our assistance was required for today's purchases." The goblin's formal tone attracted more stares. Harry sensed the moment slipping into spectacle, which wasn't part of today's plan. "Perhaps we should start shopping?" Harry suggested. "I still need most of my supplies." Hagrid nodded, visibly relieved at the practical suggestion. "Right ya are, Harry. Got your list?" For the next 2 hours, Harry balanced a careful performance. With Hagrid, he played the wide-eyed newcomer, asking obvious questions about Quidditch when they passed quality Quidditch supplies and expressing appropriate wonder at animated book displays. With Griphook, who occasionally offered quiet observations only Harry could hear, he maintained the formal respect befitting his true position. The goblin guards remained silent sentinels, their presence causing shopkeepers to offer their finest wares and fairest prices, something Harry noted with amusement. At Ollivander's, Harry requested privacy, and Hagrid waited outside while the goblin guards flanked the door. "Curious," the silver-eyed wand-maker murmured upon seeing Harry's entourage. "Very curious indeed." "What's curious, Mr. Ollivander?" Harry asked, though he suspected the answer. "Not every day a wizard arrives with goblin guards, Mr. Potter. Not every century, in fact." The wand-maker studied Harry's face, his eyes lingering momentarily on the lightning scar. "I sense their magic upon you. Most unusual." Harry neither confirmed nor denied, simply extending his right hand, the one without the goblin signet ring, currently invisible to wizard eyes. "I need a wand, sir." After trying dozens of wands, Harry finally matched with Holly and Phoenix Feather, the brother to Voldemort's wand, Ollivander explained in hushed tones. "The goblin magic in your blood does not reject the wand," Ollivander observed as Harry paid for his purchase. "That speaks to your unique position, Mr. Potter." Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not sure what you mean." The wand-maker smiled mysteriously. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. Yours has chosen, all of you." As Harry left the shop, Griphook fell into step beside him. "Wand-makers have always seen too much," the goblin muttered. "Be wary of that one." Their final stop was Elop's Owl Emporium, where a snowy white owl immediately caught Harry's attention. As he approached her cage, the owl fixed him with amber eyes that seemed to evaluate his worth. "She's a beauty," Hagrid said, beaming. "Perfect familiar for a young wizard." The owl gave a soft hoot as Harry opened the cage door, stepping gracefully onto his outstretched arm. He felt an immediate connection, not unlike the first time he'd channeled magic through goblin metal. "I'll take her," he said. "What will you name her?" Hagrid asked as they exited the shop. Harry considered. Hedwig, he decided, recalling a name from goblin histories, a legendary white-feathered griffin who had once allied with the Garthel clan. As they reached the leaky cauldron, Harry knew it was time for the next phase. He turned to Hagrid. "Thank you for everything today. Griphook will ensure I reach platform 9 3/4 on September 1st. Hagrid's expression clouded. "But Harry, Dumbledore asked me to. I assure you," Griphook interjected smoothly, "Mr. Potter's security and timely arrival are Gringotts' highest priority. The Goblin Nation has taken a special interest in the Potter heir's welfare." Hagrid looked torn, but ultimately nodded. "All right then. But Harry," he leaned down to whisper, "though the goblins could certainly hear, Dumbledore will want to know about all this." Harry smiled innocently. "Of course. I look forward to meeting him at Hogwarts." After Hagrid's reluctant departure, Griphook led Harry to a private room at the back of the leaky cauldron. Inside waited Nagnok, dressed in a finely tailored muggle suit that disguised his goblin features just enough to avoid notice in the pub. "Well played," the Goblin King said once privacy wards were raised. "Dumbledore's man will certainly report your unusual arrival. The first seeds are planted." "Was the honor guard necessary?" Harry asked, relaxing his posture now that the performance had ended. Nagnok's sharp teeth flashed in a rare smile. "Absolutely. The wizarding world must recognize from the beginning that you stand apart from their expectations." He gestured to a large trunk in the corner. "Your additional supplies are there, goblin-made armor sized for your current height, communication mirrors, and reference texts not on the Hogwarts list." Harry nodded gratefully. "And my continued training?" "Every Saturday night," Griphook answered. "The Hogsmeade branch manager has cleared secure rooms beneath the bank. You'll use the passages we've shown you." "And if I'm followed?" "The Supreme Overlord ring allows you to pass through our wards undetected. Others will find only solid stone where passages exist for you." Nagnok adjusted his human-like glamour with a flick of his fingers. "Now, we have one final meeting before you begin your Hogwarts journey." Harry raised an eyebrow. "With whom?" "A potential ally from an old family. Someone who understands the game of influence." Nagnok's expression grew serious. "Remember, Harry, in the wizarding world, bloodlines and allegiances are weapons as deadly as any blade." The Hogwarts Express gleamed scarlet against the platform's grey stone. Steam billowed around chattering families as students dragged trunks and caged pets toward waiting carriages. Harry stood apart from the chaos, observing. He'd arrived early through a concealed Gringotts passage, emerging directly onto platform 9 3/4 without passing the Muggle barrier. This time, no goblin guards accompanied him. Nagnok had agreed it was wiser to appear more conventional at school. Blending in is its own kind of armor, Silver Axe had advised during their final training session. "Hide your strength until needed." Harry scanned the platform, identifying several families from Nagnok's briefing. The Malfoys stood aloof near the front of the train, platinum blonde hair unmistakable. The Weasleys had just burst through the barrier, a tumult of red hair and second-hand trunks. And there, by the middle carriage, stood Greengrass, the family Harry had met at the Leaky Cauldron 2 weeks prior. Lord Cygnus Greengrass nodded formally as Harry approached, his aristocratic features betraying no familiarity beyond standard courtesy. "Heir Potter," he said. "Lord Greengrass," Harry replied with the exact bow protocol demanded, respectful but not subservient, as befit his status. Beside Cygnus stood his daughter Daphne, a girl Harry's age with honey blonde hair and intelligent blue eyes. Their meeting at the Leaky Cauldron had been brief but illuminating. Unlike most wizarding families who saw goblins as mere bankers, the Greengrasses maintained trade agreements with several goblin clans. They understood the value of such alliances. "Good morning, Herr Potter," Daphne said with perfect poise. "Looking forward to the sorting?" "Indeed, Miss Greengrass," Harry replied. "Though I find myself more concerned with the curriculum than the ceremony." A subtle test, one Daphne passed with the faintest smile. "The official curriculum can be limiting," she agreed. "Fortunately, Hogwarts offers many opportunities for supplementary education." Lord Greengrass checked his pocket watch. "The train departs soon. Daphne, perhaps you and Herr Potter would like to secure a compartment. Translation: continue your conversation in private." They boarded together, finding an empty compartment near the back. Once the door closed, Daphne's formal demeanor relaxed slightly. "Father says you're the most interesting development in wizarding politics since the war ended," she said, arranging her robes as she sat. Harry raised an eyebrow. "Political analysis seems advanced for first years." "Perhaps for most," she conceded. "But I've been attending Father's political dinners since I was 7. The noble houses start training heirs young, as I suspect your goblin friends have done with you." Harry neither confirmed nor denied, merely offering a non-committal Daphne didn't press, which confirmed his initial impression of her intelligence. The compartment door slid open as a round-faced boy peered in anxiously. "Sorry, but have you seen a toad?" "I've lost mine." "No toads here," Daphne replied, her tone cooling considerably. "Oh. Well, thanks anyway." The boy looked ready to continue his search when Harry spoke. "What's your name?" "Neville Longbottom," the boy answered, shoulders hunching slightly as though expecting ridicule. Harry recognized the name immediately. One of the old family's Nagnok had briefed him on, and one with historical significance to Harry personally. According to Goblin records, Alice and Frank Longbottom had been close friends of his parents before being tortured into insanity shortly after Voldemort's fall. "I'm Harry Potter," he said, extending his hand. "Would you like help finding your toad?" Neville's eyes widened at the name, but to his credit, they didn't immediately dart to Harry's forehead. "Why you'd help me?" "Of course." Harry turned to Daphne. "Miss Greengrass?" She considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Though I suggest a summoning charm would be more efficient than searching compartment by compartment." "First years aren't supposed to know summoning charms," Neville said. Daphne merely smiled. "There are advantages to private tutoring." Accio Neville's toad. After a moment of silence, they heard a faint croaking grow louder before a green blur shot through the corridor and into Daphne's outstretched hand. "Trevor!" Neville exclaimed, accepting the squirming amphibian. "Thank you. You're welcome to join us," Harry offered, gesturing to the empty seats. Neville hesitated, looking between Harry and Daphne. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude." "We insist," Harry said, making the decision. Goblin politics had taught him the value of unexpected alliances. The Longbottom heir might seem unimpressive now, but bloodlines and magic had ways of asserting themselves. The journey continued with the addition of 2 more first years, a bushy-haired girl named Hermione Granger who demonstrated remarkable knowledge for a Muggle-born, and a lanky redhead named Ron Weasley who seemed both odd and uncomfortable in Harry's presence. Harry observed the dynamics with interest. Daphne maintained cool politeness toward the newcomers. Neville gradually relaxed, revealing surprising knowledge of magical plants. Hermione recited facts from textbooks like incantations. And Ron alternated between awkward silence and enthusiastic descriptions of Quidditch. "My brothers say the sorting's some kind of test," Ron said as they neared Hogwarts. "Fred reckons it hurts a lot." "That's ridiculous," Hermione declared. "I've read Hogwarts, a history, and it clearly states that students are sorted by the sorting hat, an artifact enchanted by the founders themselves. She's right, Harry confirmed, having read the same text among many others. The hat reads your character and places you accordingly. What house do you think you'll be in, Harry? Neville asked. An excellent question. Harry had considered this carefully. His goblin training might suggest Slytherin. Cunning and ambition were prized in the Goblin Nation. But drawing too much attention to those traits might raise unwanted questions. I'm not sure, he said truthfully. My parents were Gryffindors, but each house has its merits. Daphne's eyes met his briefly, acknowledging the diplomatic answer. I'll likely be in Slytherin, she said. Most greengrasses are. Ron's expression soured slightly. My whole family's been Gryffindor. Perhaps you'll start a new tradition, Daphne suggested with just enough edge to make Ron's ears redden. Harry intervened before tensions could escalate. The important thing is that the house suits your strengths. Goblin clans are similar, each values different traits, but all are respected for their contributions. Goblin clans? Hermione asked, her curiosity evidently piqued. I didn't read about those in any of the textbooks. They wouldn't be in standard texts, Harry replied carefully. Goblins guard their cultural knowledge closely. How do you know about them then? Ron asked, frowning. Harry gave a measured shrug. Gringotts manages my family accounts. I've had some interaction with their representatives. Before anyone could question further, the train began slowing. Conversation shifted to the imminent arrival, and Harry exchanged a subtle nod with Daphne. Their unspoken agreement, observe more, reveal less. The Great Hall exceeded even Harry's expectations. Having spent years in the magnificent caverns of the Goblin realm, he wasn't easily impressed by human architecture. But the enchanted ceiling reflecting the night sky, thousands of floating candles, and ancient stone walls radiating centuries of accumulated magic created an atmosphere even a goblin craftsman would appreciate. As Professor McGonagall placed the sorting hat on its stool, Harry studied the staff table. Dumbledore sat at the center, his long silver beard and half-moon spectacles exactly as Harry remembered from that night 6 years ago. To his right sat a hook-nosed man with greasy black hair, eyes dark and evaluating as they swept over the first years. Severus Snape, according to Nagnok's briefing, potions master, former Death Eater, and one-time friend of Harry's mother. Most interesting to Harry, however, was the diminutive professor seated on a stack of cushions, Filius Flitwick, part Goblin Charms master and former dueling champion. Nagnok had specifically mentioned him, not fully goblin, not fully trusted by either world, but brilliant and fair-minded. A potential ally, if approached correctly. The sorting began. Hannah Abbott and Susan Bones went to Hufflepuff. Terry Boot and Mandy Brocklehurst to Ravenclaw. When Hermione's turn came, the hat deliberated before placing her in Gryffindor, which seemed to surprise Ron. Greengrass, Daphne, McGonagall called. Daphne walked forward with practiced grace. The hat barely touched her blonde hair before declaring, Slytherin. She joined her house table with a satisfied expression. Neville, to his obvious surprise, was sorted into Gryffindor after a lengthy deliberation. When Draco Malfoy was called, the hat shouted, Slytherin, before fully touching his head. Finally, Potter, Harry. Whispers erupted throughout the hall as Harry stepped forward. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter. Harry sat on the stool, and the ancient hat dropped over his eyes. My, a small voice spoke in his ear. What have we here? Harry Potter with goblin magic flowing through his veins. Supreme Overlord, no less. How fascinating. You can see that? Harry thought, momentarily alarmed. I see everything in your mind, Mr. Potter. Your secrets are safe with me, I've kept the confidences of students for 1,000 years. Now, where to put you? You've courage, certainly. Intelligence in abundance. Loyalty to those who've earned it. And ambition, oh yes, though not as wizards typically define it. Harry remained silent, letting the hat deliberate. Your goblin training pulls you towards Slytherin, that cunning would serve you well there. But there's something else, a desire to bridge worlds, to reform rather than conform. Better be Gryffindor. The last word echoed through the hall. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, the Weasley twins chanting, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" As Harry made his way to join his new house, he caught Daphne's gaze across the hall. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Their alliance would continue, despite different houses. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as they followed Harry to his seat. The hook-nosed professor, Snape, studied him with an inscrutable expression. And tiny Professor Flitwick leaned forward with evident interest. The game had begun. "Remarkable control for your age, Mr. Potter," Professor Flitwick squeaked, watching Harry perfectly levitate a feather in their first charms lesson. "Most first-years struggle with the precision required." "Thank you, Professor," Harry replied modestly. "I've always found focus comes naturally to me." This was their third week of classes, and Harry had carefully calibrated his performance in each subject. In Transfiguration, he demonstrated solid but not exceptional skill. In Potions, he worked meticulously but allowed minor imperfections in his brews, partly to avoid Snape's increased scrutiny, as the man seemed to harbor inexplicable animosity toward him. But in Charms, Harry permitted himself to excel. It created a natural opening with Flitwick. After class, Harry deliberately took his time packing his bag until the room emptied. "Was there something else, Mr. Potter?" Flitwick asked, shuffling parchments on his desk. "Actually, yes, Professor." Harry approached the front of the classroom. "I was hoping to ask about goblin-wizard relations during the 17th century. The textbook's coverage seems limited." Flitwick's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. "That's an unusual area of interest for a first year." Harry shrugged. "History fascinates me. Especially perspectives that might be overlooked in standard accounts." The diminutive professor studied Harry carefully. "I see. And your interest stems from?" "My interactions with Gringotts," Harry said, offering the same explanation he'd given on the train. "They've managed my family accounts since my parents' death. I've found goblin culture intriguing." "Indeed." Flitwick set down his quill. "Well, Mr. Potter, what the textbooks won't tell you is that the Goblin Rebellion of 1612 began not as a violent uprising but as a protest against wizard appropriation of goblin-forged artifacts. Because goblin craftsmanship considers the creator to maintain ownership," Harry said, "with humans merely leasing the items for their lifetime." Flitwick's eyes widened. "Precisely. Few wizards bother to understand that cultural distinction." He leaned forward. "Mr. Potter, if you're genuinely interested in this subject, I could recommend some supplementary reading. Perhaps we could discuss it during my office hours." "I'd appreciate that, Professor." As Harry turned to leave, Flitwick added, "One moment, Mr. Potter." He hesitated, then continued more quietly. "Your wand work has a certain fluidity reminiscent of goblin magical techniques. Most unusual in a wizard so young." Harry maintained a neutral expression. "Is that a problem, sir?" "Not at all," Flitwick replied with a slight smile. "In fact, I find it rather promising. Good day, Mr. Potter." First contact established. The Halloween feast transformed the Great Hall into a spectacle of floating pumpkins, live bats, and orange streamers. Harry, however, felt no desire to celebrate. According to Goblin records, Halloween marked the anniversary of his parents' murder, hardly an occasion for festivity. He'd maintained his cover skillfully these first 2 months at Hogwarts. Publicly, he was simply Harry Potter, good student, fair Quidditch player, having made the team after the flying lesson incident with Malfoy, and friendly but somewhat reserved Gryffindor. His friendship with Ron and Hermione provided both camouflage and genuine companionship, though neither knew his true nature. His alliance with Daphne Greengrass continued through carefully orchestrated study sessions in the library, where they exchanged information under the guise of academic collaboration. Through her, Harry gained insight into Slytherin politics and ministry rumors that her father passed along. Most valuable were his Saturday nights beneath Hogsmeade, where he continued his goblin training with representatives from Nagnok's court. There, Harry could fully embrace his role as Supreme Overlord, practicing combat techniques with Silverax's deputy and advancing his knowledge of goblin magic, which complemented his wizarding studies in unexpected ways. Now, picking at his Halloween feast, Harry noticed Professor Quirrell's absence from the staff table. Something about the stuttering defense professor had triggered Harry's goblin-honed instincts from their first meeting. The man's magical signature felt wrong, fractured and overlaid with something darker. Harry's contemplation ended when Quirrell himself burst through the doors, turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted in panic until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand and ordered prefects to lead students back to dormitories. As Percy Weasley gathered the Gryffindors, Harry overheard Ron muttering to Seamus, "How'd a troll get in? Aren't they supposed to be really stupid?" A realization struck Harry: Hermione wasn't at the feast. She'd been crying in the girls' bathroom after Ron had made an unkind remark about her earlier that day. "Ron," Harry hissed, pulling him aside. "Hermione doesn't know about the troll." Ron's face paled. "Bloody hell. We need to warn her." Harry made a split-second decision. "Come on." They slipped away from the group, hurrying toward the girls' bathroom on the first floor. As they rounded a corner, Harry detected a foul stench, like old socks and unwashed toilets. Then came heavy footsteps and a low grunting. The troll was 12 feet tall, its lumpy body the color of granite, its small head perched atop massive shoulders. It dragged a wooden club along the floor, leaving gouges in the stone. "It's left the dungeons," Ron whispered, horrified. Worse, it was entering the very bathroom where Hermione likely remained. Harry's goblin training took over. He assessed the threat, considered available weapons, and calculated angles of attack. A full-grown mountain troll had naturally magic-resistant skin, spells from first years would barely irritate it. "We need to distract it," Harry said. "Make noise, get its attention away from the bathroom." Ron grabbed a metal torch bracket from the wall and hurled it against the opposite corridor. It crashed loudly, and the troll turned its tiny eyes toward the sound. "Hey, pea-brain!" Ron shouted, throwing another piece of metal. The troll roared and lumbered toward them, club raised. "Split up," Harry commanded. "Keep it confused." As Ron darted left, Harry went right, drawing his wand. Standard spells wouldn't work well, but perhaps, he pressed his wandless hand against his robes, feeling the silver armband beneath, invisible to others but always present. He channeled a thread of goblin magic through it, enhancing his next spell. Wingardium Leviosa, he cast, targeting the troll's club. Enhanced by goblin magic, the levitation charm wrenched the massive club from the troll's grasp with far more power than a normal first-year spell should possess. The wooden weapon hovered 20 feet in the air. The troll looked up in confusion. Harry cut the spell, and the club dropped, striking the troll's head with a sickening crack. The massive creature swayed, then collapsed to the floor with a thunderous impact that shook the corridor. Ron stared open-mouthed. That was brilliant. Before Harry could respond, Hermione emerged from the bathroom, face tear-stained but eyes wide with shock. "Is it dead?" "Just knocked out," Harry assured her, quickly stepping away from the fallen troll as footsteps approached. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell rounded the corner seconds later. Quirrell whimpered at the sight of the troll. Snape bent to examine it. McGonagall looked furious. "What on earth were you thinking?" she demanded. "You're lucky you weren't killed." "Please, Professor McGonagall," Hermione said in a small voice. "They were looking for me. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." Harry barely concealed his surprise at Hermione's lie. "Well, in that case," said McGonagall, "Miss Granger, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own?" After deducting house points from Hermione and awarding some to Harry and Ron for sheer dumb luck, McGonagall ordered them back to Gryffindor Tower. As they walked, Harry noticed Snape limping and blood staining his robes, injuries that hadn't been present at the feast. Quirrell, meanwhile, avoided looking directly at Harry, his hands trembling even more than usual. "Most interesting. The Ministry's planning something," Daphne murmured, sliding a newspaper clipping across the library table. "Father says Lucius Malfoy has been meeting with the Department for Regulation of Magical Creatures 3 times weekly." Harry glanced at the clipping, a small article about increased security measures at Gringotts following an attempted break-in months ago. "They think the goblins are hiding something. Or someone wants them to think that," Daphne replied. "Either way, it creates pretext for Ministry interference in goblin affairs." It was early December, and their study sessions had become a valuable intelligence exchange. Through Daphne, Harry received political insights no Gryffindor could access. In return, he shared carefully selected information about his discoveries at Hogwarts. "Snape's definitely protecting something on the 3rd floor," Harry said, referring to the forbidden corridor Dumbledore had warned students about at the start of term. "He was injured on Halloween, the same night someone let the troll in as a diversion." "And you think Quirrell is involved?" Harry nodded. "He conveniently discovered the troll, then fainted to avoid helping. And something about his magic feels corrupted." Daphne raised an elegant eyebrow. "You can feel magical signatures?" "A slip, though a calculated one." Harry was gradually allowing Daphne to glimpse more of his abilities, testing her trustworthiness. "To an extent," he admitted. "It's a skill I've been developing." "Impressive," she said, not pressing for details. "What's your theory about the 3rd floor?" "Something valuable is hidden there. Something connected to the Gringotts break-in." Daphne tapped her quill thoughtfully. "Father mentioned Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel had been in contact recently." "Flamel?" Harry recognized the name from his goblin studies. "The alchemist?" "Creator of the Philosopher's Stone," Daphne confirmed. "A legend among pureblood families, immortality and endless gold in one artifact." The pieces clicked into place. A target valuable enough to risk breaking into Gringotts, important enough for Dumbledore to protect personally, connected to both immortality and gold, it explained Quirrell's interest and the Ministry's sudden focus on Gringotts. "We should," Harry began, but stopped as his goblin-enhanced senses detected someone approaching their secluded table. He casually slid Daphne's newspaper clipping under his textbook. Seconds later, Professor Flitwick appeared around the bookshelf. "Ah, Mr. Potter, Miss Greengrass. Crosshouse studying. Excellent initiative." "Thank you, Professor," Daphne replied smoothly. "We find different perspectives valuable." "Indeed they are," Flitwick agreed with a knowing smile. "Mr. Potter, if I might have a word." Harry followed Flitwick to a more private alcove, leaving Daphne with their study materials. "I've been meaning to speak with you, Harry," the professor said, dropping formality once they were alone. "Your essay on metal-based enchantment was exceptionally insightful, particularly your observations about silver as a magical conductor." "Thank you, sir." Flitwick leaned closer. "Few wizards your age would recognize the distinction between wizard enchantment and goblin forging techniques. Fewer still would understand the theoretical principles behind both." Harry maintained a neutral expression. "I find magical theory fascinating." "As do I." Flitwick studied him intently. "You know, my grandmother was full goblin. Master metalsmith of the Ironclaw clan. She would have appreciated your perspective on silver's properties." The deliberate mention of clan affiliation was significant, an olive branch, perhaps even an acknowledgement. "The Ironclaws are respected craftsmen," Harry said carefully. Their work with defensive enchantments is particularly renowned. Flitwick's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. You are full of surprises, Mr. Potter. He hesitated, then continued in an even lower voice. I've heard whispers from certain banking associates. Unusual rumors about a human child with special status. Harry's heart raced, but his expression remained calm. This was delicate territory. Rumors often exaggerate, Professor. Indeed. Flitwick straightened. Well, should you ever wish to discuss magical theory beyond the Hogwarts curriculum, my office door is open. Particularly regarding alternative approaches to traditional wand work. I appreciate that, Professor. As Flitwick departed, Harry considered the exchange. The part-goblin professor had effectively revealed his knowledge of Harry's status while offering assistance without demanding confirmation. A skilled diplomatic approach that respected goblin traditions of discretion. Another potential ally secured. Christmas morning found Harry alone in the first-year Gryffindor dormitory. Ron's family had gone to Romania to visit his brother Charlie, and Hermione had returned to her parents. Harry had declined the Dursleys' perfunctory invitation, preferring the empty castle to their hostility. The solitude provided freedom. With most students and staff away, Harry could move more openly between Hogwarts and the Hogsmeade Gringotts branch for his training. He'd made remarkable progress combining wizard and goblin magical techniques, creating hybrid spells that drew from both traditions. A small pile of presents waited at the foot of his bed, more than he'd expected. Hagrid had sent a roughly carved wooden flute. Hermione gifted him chocolate frogs and a book on famous wizarding discoveries. From Mrs. Weasley came a hand-knitted sweater and homemade fudge. The most intriguing package contained a fluid, silvery gray garment that slithered like water through his fingers. The anonymous note read simply, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well." An invisibility cloak, and not just any cloak, but one of exceptional quality, likely goblin-enhanced according to his trained eye. The perfect tool for exploring Hogwarts secrets without detection. The final package was wrapped in plain black paper marked with the Gringotts seal. Inside lay a goblin-forged dagger, its blade etched with protection runes that glowed faintly when Harry touched them. The accompanying note, written in gobbledygook, read, "For the Supreme Overlord's protection. Blood bonded to your magic alone. Speak, conceal, in our tongue to render it invisible to wizard eyes. N." Harry smiled, appreciative of Nagnok's practicality. The dagger joined his other goblin artifacts, concealed by magic but always accessible. That night, Harry donned the invisibility cloak and ventured into the castle's depths. The third-floor corridor beckoned, the perfect opportunity to investigate what Dumbledore was hiding. Evading Filch and Mrs. Norris with ease, Harry reached the forbidden door and unlocked it with a whispered "Alohomra," enhanced by a touch of goblin magic channeled through his silver armband. The enormous three-headed dog inside jerked awake, its nostrils flaring despite Harry's invisibility. The cloak concealed sight and sound, but not scent. All three heads growled in his direction. Harry remained perfectly still, assessing the situation. The creature guarded a trapdoor. Below that likely lay additional protections before the Philosopher's Stone itself. Interesting, but not his immediate priority. Harry backed slowly toward the door. As he moved, his foot scraped against the stone floor. The dog lunged, massive jaws snapping inches from where he stood. Harry darted left, maintaining the cloak's coverage as he circled back toward the exit. The beast's hot breath penetrated the magical fabric as it tracked his movement. One misstep would mean death. Drawing on Silverac's training, Harry moved with controlled precision, each step soundless, his breathing regulated. When he reached the door, he slipped through and pulled it shut just as the middle head lunged, teeth clacking against wood. Valuable reconnaissance, despite the danger. Now he knew what guarded the stone and could better prepare for future exploration. Continuing his nighttime investigation, Harry wandered the empty corridors, reveling in the freedom his cloak provided. On the fourth floor, he discovered an abandoned classroom containing nothing but an ornate mirror standing on clawed feet. Curious, he approached it, noting the inscription along the top, Erised stra eru oit uber kafru oit onwosi. When Harry stood before the mirror, he gasped. Reflected alongside him stood a crowd of people. Directly behind his reflection were a man and woman who could only be his parents, his father with the same untidy black hair, his mother with Harry's exact green eyes. But behind them stood others, goblin figures in ceremonial armor. Nagnok, Griphook, even Silver Axe. And intermingled with them were wizards and witches, some resembling faces Harry had seen in old photographs of the Order of the Phoenix. The mirror showed his deepest desire, the bridging of worlds, the unification of his dual heritage, his parents alive to see what he had become. "I see you have discovered the mirror of Erised," came a quiet voice. Harry spun around to find Albus Dumbledore standing in the shadows. Harry quickly assessed his situation. The invisibility cloak lay at his feet where he'd removed it to approach the mirror. His goblin dagger was concealed against his forearm, but reaching for it would be obvious. Best to play innocent student caught out of bounds. "I'm sorry, Professor," he said. "I couldn't sleep." "Quite understandable," Dumbledore replied, moving closer. "The mirror has that effect on people. May I ask what you see when you look into it?" "A test, obviously." Harry considered his options and decided on partial truth. "I see my family," he said simply. "My parents." Dumbledore nodded sympathetically. "The mirror shows us nothing more or less than the deepest desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you." He sighed. "However, this mirror gives neither knowledge nor truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen." "What do you see, Professor?" Harry asked, turning the questioning back on Dumbledore. The headmaster's eyes twinkled. I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. One can never have enough socks." A lie, clearly, but Harry didn't press. Their first direct confrontation had yielded valuable insight. Dumbledore was watching him, perhaps had even planted the cloak to observe what Harry would do with it. The game grew more complex. Winter melted into spring, and Harry balanced his various roles with increasing skill. To his professors, he was a talented but not exceptional student. To his fellow Gryffindors, a loyal friend and formidable Quidditch seeker. Only Daphne Greengrass and Professor Flitwick glimpsed fragments of his true capabilities. His Saturday night training continued beneath Hogsmeade, where goblin instructors pushed him to integrate wizard and goblin magic more seamlessly. The results were remarkable, spells that no pure wizard or goblin could replicate, drawing strength from both traditions. The mystery of the Philosopher's Stone remained foremost in Harry's mind, particularly after he, Ron, and Hermione discovered that Hagrid had acquired a dragon egg from a mysterious stranger who had questioned him about the three-headed dog, which Hagrid had named Fluffy. "Talked a bit about what sorts of creatures I look after," Hagrid had admitted. "Told him after Fluffy, a dragon would be no problem. Just play a bit of music and he falls straight to sleep." The information confirmed Harry's suspicions. Someone, likely Quirrell, was systematically gathering intelligence about the stone's protections. Harry shared this development with Daphne during their next library meeting. "Music soothes the Cerberus," she mused. Classical approach. The question remains whether Quirrell is working alone or under direction. "What have you heard from your father?" Harry asked. Daphne leaned forward. "The Malfoy faction has been pushing new regulations on goblin-made artifacts. They're claiming security concerns after the Gringotts break-in, but Father suspects it's a cover to confiscate valuable items from goblin control." Harry frowned. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Ministry pressure on goblins while someone at Hogwarts pursued the Philosopher's Stone, an artifact that bridged wizard alchemy and goblin metallurgy. "Keep me informed of any developments," he said. "I need to." A sharp pain lanced through Harry's scar, momentarily disorienting him. He looked up to see Professor Quirrell passing their table, turban perfectly aligned as always. The defense professor didn't acknowledge them, but Harry felt a subtle magical probe brush against his mental shields, shields erected through years of goblin mental discipline. Harry? Daphne's voice betrayed rare concern. I'm fine, he assured her, though his suspicions had just solidified. That magical probe felt disturbingly familiar, reminiscent of the dark residue he'd detected in his own scar during deep meditation sessions with Elder Garrick. Quirrell wasn't merely after the stone. He was connected to Voldemort somehow, perhaps possessed, given the fluctuating magical signature Harry had sensed all year. The stakes had just increased exponentially. Exam week arrived with sweltering heat, particularly in the large classroom where they wrote their theory papers. They had been given special, anti-cheating quills for the exams, which Harry found amusing given that his goblin training had taught him dozens of ways to circumvent such basic precautions, not that he needed to cheat. Their very last exam was History of Magic. When Professor Binns told them to put down their quills and roll up their parchment, Harry felt genuine relief. While the academic material presented no challenge, maintaining his carefully calibrated performance, good but not suspiciously exceptional, had been mentally taxing. That was far easier than I thought it would be, Hermione said as they wandered down to the lake. I needn't have learned about the 1637 Werewolf Code of Conduct or the uprising of Elfric the Eager. Hermione always wanted to go through their exam papers afterward, but Ron said this made him feel ill. Harry usually mediated between them, but today his thoughts were elsewhere. His scar had been burning intermittently all week, a warning, he believed, that something significant was imminent. That evening, as Harry sat alone in the common room reviewing his notes on the third-floor corridor protections, Hedwig swooped through the open window carrying a small scroll sealed with the Gringotts emblem. The message, written in Goblin code, was brief but alarming: Ministry raid scheduled tomorrow. Artifacts at risk. Diversionary event expected at school. Supreme Overlord's presence requested at midnight meeting. N. The pieces fell into place. The Ministry's move against Goblin artifacts would coincide with an attempt on the stone, likely Quirrell's final play before summer break separated him from his prize. Both events required Harry's attention, but he couldn't be in two places at once. Unless. Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the Goblin signet ring. In extreme circumstances, it could be used to summon assistance. He'd never activated this feature, but the current situation qualified as an emergency. He whispered the Goblin activation phrase while pressing his thumb against the ring's surface. The gold heated briefly, acknowledging the command. 20 minutes later, Ron and Hermione burst through the portrait hole, faces flushed with excitement. Harry! Hermione exclaimed. We've figured it out. Snape's going after the stone tonight. It's not Snape, Harry said firmly. It's Quirrell. Their shocked expressions confirmed he'd disrupted their narrative. But Snape tried to kill you during that Quidditch match. Ron protested. He was countering Quirrell's curse, Harry explained. Think about it, Quirrell was muttering too, never blinking. Classic signs of a concentration-based curse. But Snape hates you, Ron insisted. Dislike isn't the same as attempted murder, Harry countered. Quirrell has been after the stone all year, using Snape as a convenient scapegoat. Hermione's brow furrowed. How can you be so certain? I've been investigating separately, Harry admitted. Gathering evidence while you two focused on Snape. This was partially true. While Ron and Hermione had fixated on the potions professor's suspicious behavior, Harry had been monitoring Quirrell through both conventional means and goblin magic, which allowed him to detect the dark magical residue surrounding the defense professor. We need to tell Dumbledore, Hermione decided. He's not here, Harry said. Coincidentally called to the Ministry today, another piece of the puzzle. We're on our own. So we stop Quirrell ourselves, Ron said, determination replacing confusion. Harry nodded. Tonight. After everyone's asleep. When midnight approached, the common room had emptied except for the three of them. Harry had convinced Ron and Hermione to wait while he retrieved his invisibility cloak from the dormitory, but his actual purpose was to check for his goblin messenger. As expected, a small, wiry goblin awaited him, concealed by magic that only Harry could see through. Razorclaw, Harry greeted quietly. "Thank you for coming." The goblin bowed. "Supreme Overlord. King Nagnok expected your summons. I am to accompany you to the Hogsmeade branch for emergency council." Harry shook his head. "I need you for a different mission. My friends and I must stop someone from stealing a powerful artifact hidden in the castle. Meanwhile, I've received Nagnok's message about the Ministry raid. I need you to tell him I'm sending protection for the endangered artifacts." Razorclaw looked skeptical. "What protection could you send from here?" Harry removed a small package from his trunk, the iron key he had forged months ago during his training with Elder Garrick. "This key is blood-bound to me," he explained. "It can temporarily extend Goblin Sanctuary protections to wizard spaces. Tell Nagnok to place it in the vault containing the most vulnerable artifacts. The Ministry won't be able to penetrate those wards." Razorclaw's eyes widened. "You've mastered blood extension enchantments. Even full goblin smiths struggle with such magic." "I had excellent teachers," Harry replied with a faint smile. "Now go, there's little time." After the goblin departed through a passage only they could access, Harry retrieved his invisibility cloak and rejoined his friends. "That took ages," Ron complained. "Sorry," Harry said. "Had to avoid waking Neville." They set off through the portrait hole, Harry carrying not just his wand but his concealed goblin dagger and several enchanted metal discs that could generate temporary shields, all hidden beneath his robes. The journey to the third floor proceeded smoothly until they encountered Peeves. Harry, drawing on his goblin-trained talent for mimicry, successfully imitated the Bloody Baron's rasping voice, sending the poltergeist scurrying away. "Brilliant, Harry," whispered Ron. At the forbidden corridor, they found the door already ajar. "Quirrell's already past Fluffy," Harry whispered. Hermione pulled out a wooden flute Hagrid had given her for Christmas. "I'll play. You two go ahead." As she began a somewhat tuneless melody, the massive three-headed dog's eyes drooped and it slumped to the ground, fast asleep. "Keep playing," Ron advised unnecessarily as they approached the trapdoor. He pulled it open, revealing nothing but dark space below. "I'll go first," Harry volunteered. "If anything happens to me, get out and find Professor McGonagall." Without waiting for agreement, he lowered himself through the opening and let go. He fell through cold, damp air and landed with a muffled thump on something soft. Goblin night vision quickly adjusted, revealing writhing plant tendrils beneath him. "It's okay," he called up. "It's a soft landing." Ron followed immediately. As Hermione dropped down after them, the plant began wrapping tendrils around their legs. "It's Devil's Snare!" Hermione cried. "We need fire." Harry could have easily generated flames through goblin magic, but instead drew his wand. "Incendio," he cast, producing controlled blue flames that caused the plant to recoil, freeing them to drop through to the passage below. They continued through a chamber filled with flying keys, where Harry's seeker skills proved invaluable in capturing the correct one, then faced a giant wizard's chess set that Ron navigated with surprising strategic brilliance, though at the cost of sacrificing himself in the final move. "Go on," Ron groaned from where he lay after being struck by the White Queen. "Don't hang around here. I'll be fine." Harry and Hermione proceeded to a chamber containing a logic puzzle of potions and a wall of black flames. Hermione solved the riddle quickly, identifying a small bottle that would allow one person through the black fire. "There's only enough for one of us," she noted. Harry nodded. "I'll go. You drink the other potion, go back, get Ron, and send an owl to Dumbledore." Hermione suddenly threw her arms around him. "Harry, you're a great wizard, you know." "Not as good as you," he replied honestly, "at standard wizard magic, at least." "Me," said Hermione. Books. And cleverness. There are more important things, friendship and bravery. After she departed, Harry drank the potion, feeling ice flood his veins, and stepped through the black flames into the final chamber. As expected, Quirrell stood before the mirror of Erised, his back to the entrance. "I wondered if I'd be meeting you here, Potter," he said without turning, his voice no longer affected by a stutter. "The stuttering was a nice touch," Harry commented, moving slowly to one side to gain better positioning. "Almost had me fooled." Quirrell laughed coldly. "Yes, who would suspect P.P. poor St. stuttering P. Professor Quirrell? Especially next to Snape, who's always swooping around like an overgrown bat." With a snap of his fingers, Quirrell conjured ropes that bound Harry tightly. A standard wizard restraint, but one Harry could escape through goblin methods if necessary. For now, he remained bound, gathering intelligence. "You're too nosy to live, Potter. I noticed you watching me all year, always turning up where you shouldn't be. But no matter, I'm busy examining this interesting mirror." Quirrell circled the mirror of Erised, tapping its frame. "I see myself presenting the stone to my master. But how do I get it?" "Your master?" Harry asked, testing a theory. "Voldemort, I presume." Quirrell spun around, fury etched on his face. "How dare you speak his name? He's here, isn't he? With you somehow." A new voice answered, high, cold, and emanating from Quirrell himself. "Let me speak to him, face to face." "Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough, for this." Quirrell unwrapped his turban, turning slowly to reveal a chalk-white face with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils protruding from the back of his head. "Harry Potter," it whispered. "See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor, possessing another's body to take physical form." Harry had suspected possession, but the reality was more disturbing than he'd imagined. Voldemort existed as a parasitic entity, draining Quirrell's life force to sustain himself. "Once I have the elixir of life, I will create a body of my own," Voldemort continued. "Now, give me the stone in your pocket." Harry blinked in surprise, then realized, while distracted by Voldemort's revelation, the mirror must have granted him the stone, responding to his desire to find it but not use it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Harry lied, buying time as he worked his bound hands toward his concealed goblin dagger. "Don't lie to me," Voldemort hissed. "Kill him." Quirrell lunged forward. As his fingers closed around Harry's throat, something extraordinary happened. Wherever Quirrell's skin contacted Harry's, the professor howled in agony, his flesh blistering and smoking. "Kill him, fool!" Voldemort screamed. Harry seized the opportunity, pressing his hand against Quirrell's face, causing the man to shriek in pain. The ropes binding him loosened as Quirrell struggled to retreat. Harry broke free, drawing his goblin dagger with practiced speed. The blade, enhanced by goblin magic and blood bound to Harry, glowed with silver light as he slashed at Quirrell's arm. Where it cut, the flesh blackened not just with physical injury but magical corruption, goblin metallurgy directly attacking the dark magic sustaining Voldemort's possession. "What is this magic?" Voldemort howled as Quirrell staggered backward. Harry pressed his advantage, combining wizard and goblin magic in a devastating assault. His left hand channeled protective energy through his silver arm band while his right wielded the goblin dagger in precise, trained movements. "You killed my parents," Harry growled, advancing on the retreating professor. "You destroyed families. Terrorized innocents. And for what? Power you never truly understood." With each slash of the goblin blade, Voldemort's parasitic form weakened. Dark mist began leaking from Quirrell's body as the connection between host and possessor deteriorated. "This is not wizard magic." Voldemort snarled, recognition and fear mingling in his voice. "What have you become, Potter?" Harry didn't answer, focusing instead on maintaining his attack. Quirrell collapsed, body convulsing as Voldemort's spirit fought to maintain its hold. With a final, desperate surge, Harry drove the goblin dagger directly into the grotesque face on the back of Quirrell's head. The blade sank to its hilt, and a terrible scream echoed through the chamber as darkness erupted from the wound. Voldemort's spirit, now fully separated from its host, circled the room in a furious whirlwind before plunging straight through Harry's chest. The impact knocked him backward, pain exploding in his scar as darkness claimed him. His last conscious thought, the Philosopher's Stone, remained secure in his pocket, and miles away, his iron key would be protecting goblin treasures from Ministry seizure. Supreme Overlord, indeed. Harry awakened in the hospital wing to find Dumbledore seated beside his bed, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Good afternoon, Harry," the headmaster said. "You've had quite an adventure." Harry assessed his situation quickly. The goblin dagger was gone, likely hidden away with his other possessions. His armband and signet ring remained, invisible to wizard eyes. Most importantly, his mental shields were intact, protecting his secrets from potential legilimency probes. "Sir," Harry began, "the stone is safe," Dumbledore assured him. "Quirrell failed to take it from you. Though I must say, you defended it with remarkable skill for a first-year student." The slight pause spoke volumes. Dumbledore had questions about Harry's capabilities but was approaching the subject obliquely. "I got lucky," Harry offered, maintaining his cover. "When he touched me, his skin burned." "Ah, yes. Your mother's protection. When she died to save you, she left a mark no visible sign. To have been loved so deeply provides a shield Voldemort could not understand." Harry nodded, accepting this partial truth. His mother's sacrifice had indeed protected him, but Dumbledore clearly hadn't identified the goblin magic that had enhanced that protection during his confrontation with Quirrell. Their conversation continued, Dumbledore explaining that the stone would be destroyed and confirming that Voldemort had indeed survived that Halloween night as a spectral entity. What remained unspoken was more interesting, Dumbledore's careful avoidance of asking directly about Harry's unusual combat abilities or the strange magical signatures that must have lingered in the chamber. After the headmaster departed, Harry had other visitors. Ron and Hermione recounted their perspectives, having successfully alerted McGonagall after Harry entered the final chamber. Hagrid arrived tearful and apologetic for revealing information about Fluffy. Madame Pomfrey fussed over his health while reluctantly allowing the stream of well-wishers. Most surprising was a brief, silent visit from Professor Snape, who entered, studied Harry with inscrutable dark eyes for several long moments, then departed without a word. Only one visitor arrived unseen by the hospital staff. As Harry slept that night, he sensed a presence and opened his eyes to find Griphook standing beside his bed, concealed by goblin magic. "Supreme Overlord," the goblin greeted softly. "King Nagnok sends his regards and gratitude. Your iron key protected our most precious artifacts from Ministry confiscation. The raid found nothing of value." Harry smiled faintly. "And Voldemort failed to obtain the Philosopher's Stone. A successful night on both fronts." "Indeed." Griphook produced a small vial of golden liquid. "Healing elixir. Goblin made. It will accelerate your recovery without raising suspicion." After Harry drank the bitter concoction, Griphook added, "The Goblin Nation is impressed by your actions. Defeating a dark wizard while simultaneously protecting our treasures demonstrates the wisdom of Nagnok's decision 6 years ago." "I only did what was necessary," Harry replied. "Which is precisely what makes you worthy of your title." Griphook bowed. "Rest now. We will continue your training over the summer months. There is much yet to learn." As the goblin departed through a passage invisible to wizard eyes, Harry considered the events of his first year at Hogwarts. He had successfully maintained his dual identity while defending both worlds from distinct threats. He'd formed valuable alliances with Daphne Greengrass and Professor Flitwick, laid groundwork for future operations, and directly confronted Voldemort himself. Not bad for a first year. But Harry knew this was merely the beginning. Voldemort would return, stronger next time. The Ministry's interest in goblin affairs wouldn't fade. And somewhere between these competing forces, Harry would continue building his bridge between worlds, the supreme overlord who belonged fully to neither but fought for both. The year ahead promised new challenges. Harry Potter, boy who lived to the wizards and supreme overlord to the goblins, would be ready. Chapter 3, Silver and Steel. The London summer sweltered, heat radiating from pavement and brick as Harry made his way through the crowded underground station. Dressed in Muggle clothes that actually fit, purchased with his own Gringotts funds rather than Dudley's cast-offs, he could have passed for any ordinary teenager. Only the occasional glint of gold in his green eyes when he passed through shadow might have given him away to a particularly observant watcher. Today marked the 3rd anniversary of his first goblin-forged weapon, and tradition demanded he bring an offering of his own creation. The small package in his backpack contained a silver compass, crafted during his final weeks at Hogwarts under Flitwick's discreet supervision. Its needle pointed not north but toward whatever the user considered most valuable, a subtle combination of wizard enchantment and goblin metallurgy that had taken weeks to perfect. Harry exited at Charing Cross and made his way toward the leaky cauldron, maintaining awareness of his surroundings as Silveraxe had taught him. No obvious tales, magical or mundane. Still, something felt off. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a warning sensation he'd learned never to ignore. Inside the magical pub, Harry nodded politely to Tom the bartender and headed straight for the back wall. The brick passage opened at his touch, revealing Diagon Alley in its summer glory. Witches and wizards in lightweight robes browsed open-air displays while street vendors hawked cooling charms and enchanted paper fans. Gringotts stood imposing as ever at the street's end, white marble gleaming in the sunlight. As Harry approached, he noticed 2 wizards flanking the entrance, not the usual goblin guards, but ministry officials in administrative robes. They studied each customer entering the bank with unusual scrutiny. Interesting. The ministry's interest in goblin affairs clearly hadn't diminished since their failed raid last December. Harry climbed the white steps, maintaining his role as an ordinary Hogwarts student. One of the ministry wizards, a thin man with a pinched face, stepped forward. "Name and purpose of visit?" he asked, quill poised over a clipboard. "Harry Potter," he replied, allowing a hint of teenage annoyance to color his voice. "I'm just making a withdrawal from my vault." The wizard's eyes performed the familiar flick upward to Harry's scar. "The Potter Trust Vault?" Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. The ministry shouldn't have specific knowledge of his accounts. "That's between me and Gringotts, isn't it?" The second official, older, with graying temples, intervened. "Just routine questions, Mr. Potter. Security measures. You may proceed." Inside the bank, Harry assessed the atmosphere immediately. Tension hung in the air like the moment before a lightning strike. The goblin tellers maintained their professional demeanor, but Harry's trained eye caught subtle differences. The guards stood more rigidly, hands closer to concealed weapons, and the usual low hum of gobbledygook conversations behind the counters had ceased entirely. Harry approached a free teller, presenting his key as any wizard would. "I'd like to visit my vault, please." The goblin, Sharptooth, whom Harry knew well but pretended not to recognize, examined the key with exaggerated care. "Everything seems to be in order. Griphook will take you down." Minutes later, safely within the privacy of the underground cart system, Griphook spoke freely. "We have a situation, Supreme Overlord. King Nagnok awaits you in the lower council chamber, not your vault." "The ministry officials outside?" "Part of it," Griphook replied grimly as the cart plunged deeper than Harry's vault level, taking rarely used tracks that spiraled toward the oldest Gringotts sections. "But there are greater concerns." The cart finally stopped at a bare stone platform unmarked by vault doors or torches. Griphook placed his palm against the seemingly solid wall, which rippled like water before dissolving to reveal a hidden passage. "This way," he said, leading Harry through narrow tunnels that bore marks of extreme age, not the refined stonework of Upper Gringotts but rough-hewn passages created centuries before modern goblin architecture. They emerged into a circular chamber dominated by a massive round table of polished obsidian. Around it sat 12 goblins in formal armor, with Nagnok at the head position. All conversation ceased as Harry entered. "Supreme Overlord," Nagnok greeted, rising to his feet. "Your timing is impeccable." Harry bowed respectfully. "King Nagnok. The Garthel clan honors me with its welcome." He completed the formal greeting in flawless gobbledygook, then switched back to English. "What's happening?" Before Nagnok could answer, a goblin Harry didn't recognize, wearing armor marked with a different clan insignia, spoke sharply. "This is what we've come to. Seeking counsel from a human child." His voice dripped contempt. "The Bloodfist clan objects to his presence in this sacred chamber." Nagnok's expression hardened. "Ambassador Ragnar, you were invited to this council as a courtesy. The Supreme Overlord's right to attend is beyond question." Harry studied the dissenting goblin with interest. Ragnar Bloodfist appeared older than Nagnok, his skin more weathered, with a distinctive scar bisecting his left eye socket. His clan, the Bloodfists, were mentioned in Harry's historical studies as traditionalists who had opposed the Gringotts banking venture, preferring isolation from wizard society. "The human wears our symbols and speaks our tongue," Ragnar sneered, "but that doesn't make him one of us. The old ways are clear, only those born of goblin blood may witness council deliberations." Harry remained outwardly calm while inwardly calculating. This wasn't a mere personality conflict but a carefully orchestrated challenge. He needed to respond correctly, neither too aggressive nor too passive. "The old ways also speak of blood debts," Harry countered, addressing the entire table rather than just Ragnar. "And of oaths freely sworn and magic willingly shared. I stand here not claiming to be goblin by birth, but honored by goblin magic through ancient rites." He pushed back his sleeve, allowing his silver arm band to become visible to all present. The runes etched into its surface glowed softly in response to his focused intent. "My blood and magic have mingled with yours," Harry continued. "I've trained under Silveraxe Blade and Elder Garrick's teachings. I've defended goblin treasures from ministry seizure and upheld our shared secrets. If Ambassador Ragnar wishes to challenge my right to be here, let him do so through proper channels." A murmur of approval rippled around the table. Goblin culture respected direct confrontation more than diplomatic evasion. Ragnar's scarred face twisted into something between a grimace and a smile. "Properly spoken, human. Very well, I formally challenge the legitimacy of your title. The Bloodfist clan does not recognize human authority in goblin matters." Nagnok sighed. "As expected. The challenge is noted." He turned to Harry. "We have more pressing matters first. Please, be seated." Harry took the empty chair to Nagnok's right, the traditional position for the Supreme Overlord. As he sat, he placed his backpack on the table. "I've brought my offering," he said. 3 years since my first blade." Nagnok nodded appreciatively as Harry unwrapped the silver compass and placed it at the center of the obsidian table. The goblin counselors leaned forward, professional interest overcoming political tensions as they examined the craftsmanship. "Interesting work," admitted an older goblin Harry recognized as Iron Fist, master of the Metallurgy Guild. "The directional enchantment is unusual. It points to whatever the holder values most," Harry explained. "Not physical location only, but concept or person." To demonstrate, Harry touched the compass briefly. The needle swung immediately toward the council chamber, where all the goblin representatives sat. "Symbolic," Nagnok commented. "The Supreme Overlord values his connection to our nation above material treasures." Ragnar scoffed but couldn't hide his intrigue as the needle realigned when another goblin touched it. "Clever workmanship," he conceded grudgingly. "For a human." "Now," Nagnok said, returning to business, "our situation is complex. The Ministry of Magic has increased pressure on Gringotts significantly since their failed raid. They've stationed officials at all magical bank branches, monitoring transactions and customer movements. More concerning, they've enacted new regulations requiring registration of all goblin-made artifacts for security purposes. Legalized theft, spat another counselor. Once registered, they'll find excuses to confiscate our greatest works. Precisely, Nagnok agreed. But there's more. 3 days ago, we detected unauthorized entry into our deepest vaults, vaults that supposedly only goblins can access. Harry frowned. How is that possible? That, said Iron Fist grimly, is why we needed the Supreme Overlord. The intruders used a corruption of goblin magic, blood-based but twisted in ways that suggest dark wizard influence. What was taken? Harry asked. Nothing, Nagnok replied. But something was left behind. He gestured to Griphook, who placed a small black stone on the table beside Harry's compass. The stone was ordinary in appearance, roughly oval, smooth, about the size of a chicken egg. But Harry's goblin-enhanced senses detected something deeply wrong about it. The magic emanating from it felt sickly, corrupted. What is it? A listening stone, explained Iron Fist. But perverted. Traditional versions allow communication between clan leaders during wartime. This aberration allows wizard magic to penetrate our wards undetected. We found 3 more throughout Gringotts, Nagnok added. All placed near secure vaults containing historical artifacts. Harry was beginning to see the pattern. You think Voldemort's followers are behind this? Looking for something specific? Yes, Nagnok confirmed. And we believe their target may be the Founder's Forge. The chamber fell silent. Even Ragnar looked disturbed. I thought that was a myth, Harry said carefully. The Founder's Forge featured in Goblin legends, the original furnace where the first goblin smiths had allegedly crafted weapons of extraordinary power. Most wizards believe so, said Iron Fist. But the forge exists. It has been hidden for centuries, its location known only to the High Council and passed from king to king. If the Dark Lord's servants acquire the forge, Nagnok explained, they could corrupt goblin metalworking at its source. Imagine weapons that turn against their makers, gold that poisons its owners, shields that trap rather than protect. Harry nodded, understanding the severity. And the Ministry's sudden interest in goblin artifacts might not be coincidental. Indeed, agreed Nagnok. We suspect infiltration, certain officials using legitimate Ministry authority to advance the Dark Lord's agenda. What can I do? Harry asked. Ragnar interrupted. This is precisely my objection. We face a grave threat to goblin sovereignty, yet we turn to a human child for salvation. Have we become so weak? Not for salvation, Nagnok corrected sharply. For alliance. The Supreme Overlord stands between our worlds. He can move in wizard society without suspicion, access resources we cannot. And I still maintain he has no legitimate claim to that title. Ragnar slammed his fist on the obsidian table. The ancient laws are clear, only through trial by combat can an outsider's worthiness be truly tested. Harry met the challenging goblin's gaze directly. Name your champion, Ambassador Ragnar. I won't hide behind technicalities. Nagnok shot Harry a warning look, but Harry had calculated this move carefully. Accepting the challenge would gain respect even from his critics, and years of training under Silver Axe had prepared him for goblin combat protocols. Ragnar's scarred face split into a predatory grin. I name Gornik, Blade Master of the Bloodfist clan. 3 days hence, in the trial arena beneath Old London. Traditional weapons, no wizard magic. I accept, Harry said firmly. And when I prevail, the Bloodfist clan will acknowledge my title without further challenge. If you prevail, Ragnar corrected. And if you fall, the mantle of Supreme Overlord returns to obscurity, and humans are banned from council chambers for another 8 centuries. Agreed. Harry extended his arm, pushing back his sleeve to expose the veins at his wrist, the goblin gesture for sealing important pacts. Ragnar did the same, and Iron Fist produced a ceremonial dagger. Both Harry and Ragnar allowed their blood to fall upon the obsidian table, where it sizzled briefly before vanishing into the stone. "It is witnessed," intoned Nagnok. "The trial is set." The meeting continued, discussing strategies for identifying the corrupt listening stones and tracking their creators. Throughout, Harry noticed Ragnar studying him with calculated interest, not merely hostile, but evaluating. The challenge was personal to the Blood Fist ambassador, yet something deeper seemed to motivate his opposition. As the council adjourned, Nagnok pulled Harry aside. "That was either very brave or very foolish," the Goblin King said. "Gornik is the finest duelist the Blood Fists have produced in generations." "I know," Harry replied. "Silveraxe mentioned him during my training. But I need the Blood Fists' respect if I'm going to be effective in uniting the clans against whatever Voldemort is planning." Nagnok's expression softened slightly. "Your understanding of goblin politics has matured. Still, you face a formidable opponent. Report to Silveraxe immediately for intensive training. 3 days isn't much preparation." Harry nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Dumbledore's been watching me more closely since the incident with Quirrell. I think he suspects my connection to the Goblin Nation." "Has he confronted you directly?" "No. He's too subtle for that. But Professor Flitwick has hinted that the headmaster has been asking questions about my unusual magical signature." Nagnok considered this. "Flitwick remains trustworthy?" "I believe so. He's been helping me refine my hybrid magic techniques without asking too many questions. His part goblin heritage gives him a unique perspective." "Very well." Nagnok straightened. "Focus on surviving your trial first. We'll address Dumbledore's suspicions afterward." As Harry departed through hidden passages that would return him to Diagon Alley unobserved, he reflected on how complicated his life had become. The coming year would bring not only the trial by combat but his 3rd year at Hogwarts, with all its academic challenges and social dynamics. And beneath it all, Voldemort's agents moved in shadow, seeking goblin secrets for their master's return. The weight of 2 worlds rested on his shoulders. Harry smiled faintly. He wouldn't have it any other way. The trial arena dated back to the Goblin Rebellions, a vast circular chamber hewn from London's bedrock hundreds of feet beneath the city streets. Tiered stone seating surrounded a sand-covered fighting pit 50 feet in diameter. Enchanted crystals embedded in the ceiling cast bright, unwavering light across the arena, eliminating shadows where combatants might hide. Harry stood in the preparation chamber, Silveraxe methodically checking his armor, a lightweight combination of goblin-forged metal plates over flexible leather, designed for mobility rather than heavy protection. The past 3 days had been brutal, with Silveraxe driving him through combat drills from dawn until exhaustion claimed him. "Remember," Silveraxe growled, tightening a bracer, "Gornik favors aggression over patience. He will attack immediately, trying to overwhelm you in the first exchange." "I remember," Harry confirmed, rolling his shoulders to settle the armor. "Counter with defensive pivots, maintain distance until he overextends." Silveraxe nodded approval. "And your weapons?" Harry indicated the short sword at his hip, the same one he trained with for years, its blade etched with subtle protection runes, and the 3 throwing daggers sheathed across his chest. "No shield?" Silveraxe questioned. "Too restrictive for my fighting style," Harry replied. "I need mobility to counter his strength advantage." The grizzled combat instructor grunted acknowledgement. "You've learned well. But don't underestimate Gornik. He's killed 17 challengers in formal combat. Technically," Harry pointed out with a faint smile, "I'm not challenging him. Ragnar issued the challenge to my position." "Technicalities won't matter once blades are drawn," Silveraxe retorted. "Focus on survival first, victory second." A horn sounded, the 5-minute warning. Nagnok entered the preparation chamber, dressed in formal regalia befitting a clan king, golden-laid armor, a circlet of platinum around his domed head, and a ceremonial axe belted at his waist. The Bloodfist clan has assembled in force, he informed them. Nearly 200 members. They expect to witness your downfall. Then they'll be disappointed, Harry replied with more confidence than he felt. Nagnok studied him carefully. You've grown much since that frightened child hid me from wizard authorities in his cupboard. Whatever happens today, I am proud of what you've become. The words, so uncharacteristically sentimental from the normally pragmatic king, caught Harry by surprise. He bowed formally, goblin style. Your guidance has been my foundation, your majesty. Another horn blast, the final call. It's time, Silver Axe announced. Walk with pride, Supreme Overlord. Harry adjusted his armband, ensuring it was secure, and straightened his posture. He'd faced Voldemort, basilisks, and Dumbledore's twinkling interrogations. He could face this. The entrance to the arena opened, revealing a short tunnel that led to the sand-covered battleground. Harry walked forward alone, emerging into blinding light and a wall of sound, hundreds of goblins from various clans stomping, cheering, or jeering depending on their allegiance. Across the arena, another entrance disgorged his opponent. Gornik Bloodfist stood nearly a foot taller than the average goblin, with shoulders like granite boulders and arms corded with muscle. Unlike Harry's lighter armor, he wore heavy plates across his chest and legs, and carried a massive battle axe that looked too heavy for anyone to wield effectively. A raised platform on the arena's edge held the officials, Nagnok representing the Garthel clan, Ragnar for the Bloodfists, and Elder Garrick as neutral adjudicator. The ancient goblin raised his glowing staff. We gather to witness trial by combat, Elder Garrick announced, his magically amplified voice echoing through the chamber. Gornik of Clan Bloodfist challenges the right of Harry Potter to hold the title of Supreme Overlord. The ancient laws have been invoked. Combat continues until surrender, incapacitation, or death. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Death was rare in modern trials but remained a legitimate outcome under Goblin law. Combatants approached the center circle. Harry and Gornik advanced to a rune-inscribed circle in the arena's center. Up close, Harry could see the countless battle scars that marked the goblin warrior's face and exposed arms, evidence of decades spent honing his lethal craft. You fight well for a human child, Gornik rumbled in gobbledygook, his voice like stones grinding together. Silver Axe has taught you our ways. It will make your defeat more honorable. There's no honor in certainty, Harry replied in the same language, earning surprised glances from nearby spectators. Only in facing the unknown with courage. Gornik's eyes narrowed, reassessing. Perhaps there is some goblin spirit in you after all. Elder Garrick placed his staff between them. Place your hands upon the staff and swear to abide by the outcome, whatever it may be. Both combatants complied. Magic thrummed through the connection, binding their oaths. Return to your positions. Combat begins at the horn. They retreated to opposite sides of the arena. Harry drew his sword, its familiar weight reassuring in his hand, and centered his breathing as Silver Axe had taught him. Time seemed to slow as he entered the focused state that goblin warriors called Steel Mind. The horn blared. Gornik charged immediately, covering ground with shocking speed for his size. His battle axe whirled in devastating arcs that would cleave Harry in two if they connected. Harry waited until the last possible moment before sidestepping, using minimal movement to conserve energy. The axe blade whistled past his ear, disturbing his hair with its passing. The goblin warrior recovered with practiced ease, reversing his momentum for a horizontal swing. Harry ducked beneath it and delivered a quick slash to Gornik's extended arm, not trying to penetrate the heavy armor but testing its flexibility and his opponent's reaction time. Gornik grunted, more annoyed than injured. He pressed forward again, this time with controlled precision rather than raw aggression. The next exchanges were like a deadly dance, axe and sword clashing, bodies twisting to attack and defend, neither gaining decisive advantage. 5 minutes in, Harry realized Gornik was more dangerous than even Silver Axe had suggested. The warrior's apparent preference for overwhelming force concealed sophisticated technique and tactical awareness. Each attack limited Harry's escape options, gradually reducing his mobility advantage. Time for a different approach. Harry allowed himself to be driven back toward the arena wall, appearing to falter. Gornik pressed his advantage, committing to a powerful downward strike that would split Harry from shoulder to hip. Instead of retreating further, Harry lunged forward inside the axe's arc, accepting a glancing blow to his shoulder armor to gain position. His sword slashed across Gornik's thigh where the heavy plates had gaps for movement. Blood spattered the sand, first blood to Harry. The goblin spectators roared, some in approval, others in outrage. Gornik's expression remained impassive as he adjusted his stance to compensate for the injured leg. Good, he acknowledged. But not enough. With surprising agility, he spun and caught Harry with the axe's butt end, driving it into his ribcage. Pain exploded through Harry's torso as he stumbled backward, sword raised defensively to prevent the follow-up strike. For the next several minutes, they circled each other, trading blows that tested defenses without fully committing. Harry's ribs throbbed with each breath, while Gornik's leg left a trail of blood droplets on the sand. Neither injury was debilitating, but both would affect stamina in a prolonged fight. Harry needed to end this before fatigue compromised his speed advantage. When Gornik launched his next offensive, Harry deliberately caught the axe blade on his sword at an angle that sent uncomfortable vibrations up both their arms. While the goblin adjusted his grip, Harry drew one of his throwing daggers with his left hand and flicked it toward Gornik's face. The goblin jerked his head aside, exactly as Harry anticipated. The move exposed a gap between helmet and shoulder armor, where Harry's sword thrust found its target. Gornik roared in pain but converted the sound into a battle cry, swinging his axe in a desperate arc that caught Harry's sword arm. The blade bit through leather into flesh, and Harry's weapon clattered to the sand. Blood streaming from his wounded shoulder, Gornik pressed forward, sensing victory. Harry retreated, drawing his remaining daggers. The audience leaned forward in anticipation of the final exchange. Weaponless against the battle axe, Harry appeared doomed. Yet his expression remained calm, focused. Gornik charged, axe raised for a killing blow. Harry waited until commitment, then dropped to one knee and drove both daggers upward into the goblin's exposed armpit where the armor joints provided minimal protection. The axe stopped mid-swing. Gornik stared down at Harry, surprise evident in his beetle-black eyes. Blood, much more than from the previous wounds, poured from between the armor plates. Well placed, the goblin warrior gasped, axe slipping from suddenly nerveless fingers. You severed the battle vein. Harry withdrew his daggers and stepped back, allowing Gornik space to decide his next move. In goblin combat, this moment was crucial. The defeated could surrender honorably or commit to fighting until death. Gornik sank to one knee, matching Harry's position. With formal dignity, he placed his palm flat on the bloodied sand. I yield, he announced clearly. The human has earned his title. Relief flooded through Harry, though he maintained his warrior's composure. He sheathed his daggers and bowed to his opponent, right fist pressed to left shoulder in the goblin's salute of respect. The combat is decided, Elder Garrick proclaimed. Gornik of Clan Bloodfist has yielded. Harry Potter's claim to the title of Supreme Overlord is validated by trial and blood. The arena erupted in sound, cheers from Garthel clan members, reluctant acknowledgement from many Bloodfists, and excited chatter from neutral observers. Harry retrieved his sword and helped Gornik to his feet, supporting the injured goblin as healers rushed forward. On the officials' platform, Harry caught Ragnar's expression, not anger or disappointment as expected, but thoughtful calculation. The Bloodfist ambassador nodded once, a gesture of minimal respect but recognition nonetheless. After the healers had tended both combatants' wounds, a formal ceremony solidified the trial's outcome. Gornik presented Harry with a token from his own armor, a Bloodfist clan insignia that, when accepted, symbolized mutual respect between former adversaries. You fight with honor, Gornik told him privately. Few humans understand our ways so well. I've had excellent teachers, Harry replied. Indeed. The goblin warrior hesitated. Ambassador Ragnar's challenge was not merely political. There are concerns among the traditional clans about the future. About signs and portents. Harry's interest sharpened. What signs? Dark magic stirring in ancient places. Wizard artifacts responding to calls unheard for centuries. Gornik leaned closer. The Blood-Fist seers speak of a convergence, goblin magic and wizard power meeting at a nexus. Some interpret this as a threat to our independence. And you? What do you believe? Gornik studied him with newfound respect. After today, I believe the convergence may already have occurred. He touched the wound in his shoulder. In you. Before Harry could pursue this revelation, Nagnok approached with several clan elders. The post-combat ceremonies would consume the rest of the day, followed by a feast where diplomatic negotiations could begin in earnest. The Blood-Fist clan might have acknowledged Harry's title, but translating that into practical alliance would require finesse. Still, as Harry stood among the goblin leaders, accepting their formal recognition, he felt a sense of accomplishment deeper than any academic honor at Hogwarts. He had been tested not as the boy who lived but as himself, and had proven worthy. King's Cross Station bustled with the usual September 1st chaos. Harry navigated the crowd with practiced ease, his trunk charmed with goblin featherweight enchantments and his newly acquired snowy owl, Hedwig, drawing occasional curious glances from muggles who couldn't quite process the sight of the large bird in her cage. 2 weeks had passed since the trial by combat. His wounded arm had healed completely thanks to goblin medicine, leaving only a thin white scar that joined others from years of training. More significantly, his victory had opened diplomatic channels between the Garthel and Blood-Fist clans, with Harry serving as mediator in discussions about unified responses to both ministry pressure and the mysterious corrupted artifacts appearing in goblin territories. As he approached the barrier to platform 9 3/4, Harry spotted a familiar red-headed family ahead, the Weasleys, as chaotic and good-natured as ever. He'd maintained correspondence with Ron over the summer, though his letters necessarily omitted his goblin activities. Harry! Ron called, waving enthusiastically. Over here, mate. Mrs. Weasley enveloped him in a warm hug. Harry, dear. How wonderful to see you. Been eating properly over the summer? You look like you've grown. Hello, Mrs. Weasley, Harry replied with genuine warmth. Yes, I've been taking care of myself. The Weasley matriarch studied him with motherly concern. Well, you certainly look healthier than last year. Those relatives of yours treating you better? I haven't spent much time with them, actually, Harry said truthfully. I've been staying elsewhere for most of the summer. This wasn't technically a lie. After the combat trial, Nagnok had arranged for Harry to occupy a wizard-appropriate safe house in London, allowing him to train and attend goblin meetings without returning to the Dursleys. Mrs. Weasley seemed about to press for details when the twins intervened. Mum, we're going to miss the train if you keep interrogating Harry, said George, or possibly Fred. Yeah, save the third degree for after we've found compartments, added the other twin. Their transition onto the platform proceeded smoothly, and soon Harry found himself helping Ron stow their trunks aboard the Hogwarts Express. As they settled into an empty compartment, Hermione found them, her bushy hair even more voluminous than usual from the platform's humidity. Harry! Ron! She hugged them both enthusiastically. How were your summers? Mine was amazing. My parents took me to France, and I visited so many historical magical sites. Did you know the Parisian magical quarter predates the Ministry of Magic by nearly 3 centuries? Harry smiled at her familiar enthusiasm. Sounds fascinating, Hermione. My summer was educational too. Ron rolled his eyes. Mine was boring. Dad's been working overtime at the ministry, something about enhanced security protocols. Percy won't shut up about being made head boy. And Mum wouldn't let me visit Harry because of the whole Sirius Black situation. Harry frowned. What Sirius Black situation? Ron and Hermione exchanged startled glances. You haven't heard? Hermione asked incredulously. It's been all over the Daily Prophet for weeks. Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban, the first person ever to do so. He's a dangerous criminal, Harry. A mass murderer. And a supporter of you-know-who, Ron added grimly. Dad says, well, he says Black might be after you. Harry's mind raced. During his intensive training for the combat trial, he'd been isolated from wizard news. Neither Nagnok nor any other goblin had mentioned an Azkaban escapee, though that might have been deliberate if they thought it would distract him from his preparation. Why would he target me specifically? Harry asked, though he suspected the answer. Hermione bit her lip. According to the papers, he was one of you-know-who's most devoted followers. After you defeated his master, well. He wants revenge, Harry finished. That's why there's so much security this year, Ron said. Dad mentioned the Ministry stationed Azkaban guards around Hogwarts, Dementors. Harry's blood chilled. Dementors, the soul-sucking guardians of the wizard prison, were among the darkest creatures in magical Britain. His goblin education had included warnings about their power to drain happiness and evoke a person's worst memories. Surely Dumbledore wouldn't allow Dementors around students, Hermione protested. The Ministry overruled him, according to Dad, Ron replied. They're really desperate to recapture Black. As his friends continued discussing the implications, Harry pondered this new development. An escaped Death Eater targeting him complicated an already complex year. Between his goblin responsibilities, his Hogwarts education, and now an assassin potentially hunting him, Harry would need all his training just to survive to fourth year. The journey continued with various interruptions, Draco Malfoy making his customary antagonistic appearance, Neville joining them to discuss his summer herbology projects, and a visit from Percy Weasley proudly displaying his head boy badge. The most significant disruption came when the train suddenly slowed to a halt hours before they should have reached Hogsmeade. The compartment grew inexplicably cold. Frost crept across the windows as the lights flickered and died. Harry felt a terrible sensation, not physical pain, but a profound emptiness that seemed to reach inside him, grasping for something vital. What's happening? Hermione whispered, her breath visible in the suddenly freezing air. Harry's hand moved instinctively to his concealed goblin dagger. Through the compartment door's window, he glimpsed a tall, hooded figure gliding down the corridor, a Dementor. As it paused outside their compartment, the cold intensified unbearably. Harry heard screaming, a woman's voice, desperate and pleading. His mother, he realized with horror. The Dementor was forcing him to relive her murder. But unlike his classmates, who sat frozen in terror, Harry had resources beyond standard wizard training. Focusing through the encroaching darkness, he channeled energy through his silver armband, activating one of the protection runes Elder Garrick had taught him. A faint silver glow emanated from beneath his sleeve, invisible to others but creating a barrier between his mind and the Dementor's influence. The screaming receded slightly, allowing him to maintain consciousness even as Ron slumped against the window and Hermione trembled uncontrollably. The compartment door slid open. The Dementor hovered on the threshold, its rattling breath drawing all warmth from the air. A skeletal hand emerged from its robes, reaching toward Harry specifically. Before it could advance further, hurried footsteps approached. A man Harry didn't recognize, presumably the shabby-looking sleeper from the compartment's corner who had remained unnoticed until now, stepped between Harry and the Dementor. None of us is hiding Sirius Black under our cloaks, the man said firmly. Go. When the Dementor didn't retreat, he raised his wand. Expecto Patronum. Silver light erupted from his wand, brighter and more substantial than Harry's goblin protection, forcing the Dementor to glide backwards and eventually depart altogether. Warmth gradually returned to the compartment. Are you all right? The man asked, looking directly at Harry. Yes, Harry replied, allowing his goblin shield to fade now that the immediate threat had passed. Who are you? Professor R.J. Lupin, the man introduced himself, breaking a large chocolate bar into pieces and distributing them. Your new defense against the dark arts, teacher. Eat this, it helps counteract the Dementor's effects. As Harry accepted the chocolate, he studied Lupin more carefully. Though his robes were patched and fraying, his eyes held sharp intelligence. More intriguing, he had specifically intervened when the Dementor focused on Harry, suggesting prior knowledge or instructions regarding his safety. You made that silver light, Harry observed. A patronus charm? Lupin raised an eyebrow. Yes, though most third years wouldn't recognize it by name. I've read ahead, Harry explained, the standard excuse for any knowledge that might seem beyond his years. Sensible, given the circumstances. Lupin glanced around as the others began recovering. The patronus is the primary defense against Dementors. Highly advanced magic, but perhaps something we should cover this year, considering. After ensuring everyone had recovered, Lupin left to check other compartments. Harry's friends peppered him with questions about the Dementor and his apparent resistance to its worst effects. I heard screaming, Harry admitted. I think it was my mother, the night Voldemort killed her. Hermione gasped in sympathy while Ron winced at the name. But you stayed conscious, Ron noted. Lupin had to revive me. Harry shrugged. Maybe growing up with the Dursleys made me immune to happiness-draining creatures. The joke, though dark, redirected their attention. As the train resumed its journey, Harry contemplated the implications. Dementor specifically affected him by surfacing his worst memory, his parents' murder. If they remained stationed around Hogwarts, he would need stronger defenses than his basic goblin wards could provide. Perhaps this Professor Lupin could teach him that patronus charm. The first 2 months of Harry's third year proved more challenging than expected. The Dementors surrounding the school affected him disproportionately, making visits to Hogsmeade for his goblin training sessions particularly hazardous. Professor Lupin had agreed to teach him the patronus charm, but mastering it required more time than Harry's packed schedule easily allowed. Academically, he'd added 2 electives, ancient runes and care of magical creatures. The former complemented his goblin runic training perfectly, while the latter provided valuable knowledge about magical beings that might become allies in future conflicts. His friendship with Ron and Hermione remained strong, though occasionally strained by his frequent mysterious absences. To maintain his cover, Harry had joined the Gryffindor Quidditch team again, adding practice sessions to his already crowded calendar. Only his goblin-trained discipline and organization kept him functioning. One bright spot was defense against the dark arts, where Professor Lupin proved the most competent instructor they'd had. His practical lessons on dark creatures provided valuable information while his approachable teaching style made him popular among students. Harry sensed that Lupin knew more about him than he revealed, occasionally catching the professor watching him with a strange mixture of pride and sadness. On Halloween night, while most students attended the feast, Harry slipped away to the room of requirement, a hidden chamber Flitwick had discreetly mentioned could become whatever the user needed. Tonight, it had transformed into a secure communication space where Harry could contact Nagnok through a goblin mirror without fear of interruption. The Goblin King's face appeared in the reflective surface, his expression grave. Supreme Overlord, we have developments. The artifacts recovered from the third infiltration attempt have been examined by our best cursebreakers. They contain fragments of human remains. Harry frowned. Blood magic components? Beyond that, Nagnok replied. The fragments appear to have been prepared for a resurrection ritual, dark magic of the most forbidden kind. Combined with the continued attempts to locate the Founder's Forge, we believe Voldemort's followers are preparing for his return in corporeal form. They need goblin metallurgy to create a suitable vessel, Harry surmised. A body that can contain his fractured soul. Nagnok nodded grimly. Precisely. Which is why the diplomatic summit must proceed as planned. We need unified defense across all goblin clans. The summit Nagnok referenced had been Harry's suggestion following his trial by combat, a gathering of representatives from every major goblin clan, along with selected wizard allies, to address the growing threats from both the Ministry and Voldemort servants. Has Ragnar confirmed Bloodfist participation? Harry asked. Reluctantly, yes. Your victory over Gornik earned his cooperation, if not his enthusiasm. Nagnok's expression shifted subtly. However, we face a new complication. The Delacour family has requested participation. Harry raised an eyebrow. The Delacours were an ancient French wizarding family with unusual connections to the goblin clans of Western Europe, primarily through Apollon Delacour's Vila heritage, which created magical kinship with non-human communities. Their participation could strengthen international cooperation, Harry noted. Why is this a complication? Because they insist on bringing their eldest daughter as heir apparent, Nagnok explained. Fleur Delacour has recently turned 16 and begun her formal diplomatic training. Having a young wizard representative makes sense in theory, but the Blood Fists will see it as reducing the summit's significance, Harry finished. Sending students instead of senior representatives. Exactly. I've agreed conditionally. Fleur may attend if you personally vouch for her discretion regarding goblin matters. Harry considered this. He knew the Delacours by reputation only, wealthy, politically progressive, and powerful magical practitioners. An alliance with them could provide valuable connections in continental Europe. I'll meet with her first, Harry decided. Assess her suitability myself. Nagnok seemed satisfied with this approach. Good. The Delacours arrive at Gringotts, Paris next week. I'll arrange a secure meeting. After concluding their communication, Harry sat quietly in the room of requirement, planning his next steps. He would need to create a plausible excuse for a brief absence from Hogwarts, perhaps a visit to a specialist healer that Dumbledore couldn't easily verify. His contemplation was interrupted when the room's magic alerted him to someone approaching in the corridor outside. Harry quickly dismissed the communication setup, transforming the space into a simple study room seconds before the door opened. Professor Flitwick entered, looking unsurprised to find Harry there. Mr. Potter, he greeted cheerfully. Using the come-and-go room for some quiet study time, I see. Yes, Professor, Harry replied. It's peaceful here. Flitwick nodded, closing the door behind him. Indeed. And remarkably secure for certain, sensitive conversations. Harry maintained a neutral expression. Sir. The diminutive professor sighed, dropping his usual bubbly demeanor. Harry, I think it's time we spoke more directly. My grandmother's clan, the Iron Claws, have been approached by representatives from both the Ministry and, less savory elements, seeking information about certain goblin artifacts. What kind of artifacts? Harry asked carefully. Items related to metallurgical transformation, Flitwick replied. Crucibles, forges, enchanted hammers. Objects that could, theoretically, facilitate the creation of a magical vessel. So Flitwick knew, or at least suspected, what Voldemort's followers sought. Harry weighed his options before deciding on calculated transparency. The Founder's Forge, he said quietly. Flitwick's eyes widened slightly. You are well informed for a third-year student. And you're remarkably knowledgeable about goblin metallurgy for a charms professor. A moment of silence stretched between them before Flitwick chuckled. Well played, Mr. Potter. Yes, my grandmother ensured I understood our heritage, despite my mixed blood. The Ironclaws have traditionally been keepers of certain historical knowledge. Including the forge's significance. Flitwick hesitated. The forge represents the purest expression of goblin magic, creation unbound by wizard limitations. If corrupted by dark magic, it could create a body for Voldemort, Harry finished. One resistant to conventional magical damage. The professor studied Harry with newfound intensity. Your understanding exceeds even what I'd suspected. The goblin blood bond has given you more than just symbolic status, hasn't it? Harry didn't confirm directly but didn't deny it either. Professor, may I ask why you're telling me this now? Because Dumbledore has finally shared his suspicions about Voldemort's continued existence with key Order members, Flitwick replied. After the Chamber of Secrets incident last year, he can no longer deny the evidence. The headmaster believes Voldemort is seeking a way to return fully, and I believe the Goblin connection is one he hasn't yet recognized. The Order? Harry questioned. You mean the Order of the Phoenix? Flitwick nodded. Dumbledore's resistance organization during the First War. It never fully disbanded, merely went dormant. Now, with Sirius Black's escape and other signs, preparations are beginning again. This was valuable intelligence. If Dumbledore was mobilizing his followers, he clearly sensed the same gathering darkness that the goblins had detected. Professor, Harry said carefully, I may need to leave school grounds briefly next week. For matters related to what we've discussed. Flitwick raised an eyebrow. That would be highly irregular, Mr. Potter. And potentially dangerous with Black at large. It's important, Harry insisted. A diplomatic meeting that could help unify certain, interested parties, against the threat we both recognize. The professor considered this. I cannot officially authorize such an absence. However, I could perhaps arrange a special supervised visit to Hogsmeade for advanced charms research. What happens after we reach the village would be beyond my purview to monitor, naturally. Harry smiled gratefully. That would be perfect, Professor. Just one condition, Flitwick added. Be careful, Harry. You walk between worlds more skillfully than any student I've known, but both paths contain dangers. I understand, Harry assured him. And, thank you for your trust. As they parted ways, Harry reflected on how his circle of allies continued to expand. Flitwick's partial confirmation of his Order membership opened new possibilities for information sharing and coordination. If the Goblin Summit succeeded, Harry would have connections across multiple spheres of influence, wizard, goblin, and potentially Vila through the Delacours. The complex web might prove necessary when Voldemort made his inevitable return. Gringotts Paris occupied a magnificent marble building near the Seine, its architecture blending seamlessly with the grand Haussmann-era structures surrounding it. Unlike its London counterpart, the Paris branch embraced natural light, with enchanted skylights illuminating the main banking hall. Harry arrived through secure goblin passages, bypassing the main entrance where Ministry observers might recognize him. Griphook had accompanied him from Hogsmeade, providing both escort and cultural briefing on the Delacour family during their journey. The French magical aristocracy differs significantly from British traditions, Griphook explained as they traversed the underground network. While your ministry enforces strict separation between magical races, the continental approach has historically been more collaborative, particularly in regions with Vila influence. Because Vila themselves blur the boundaries between wizard and magical creature classifications, Harry noted. Precisely. The Delacours have leveraged this ambiguity for centuries, maintaining formal relationships with goblin clans while retaining their status in wizard society. They emerged in a private meeting room deep within the Paris Bank, where Nagnok already waited alongside a goblin Harry didn't recognize, presumably the Paris branch manager. Supreme Overlord, Nagnok greeted formally. The Delacours will join us momentarily. Silveraxe has completed the security sweeps. Harry nodded, adjusting his formal robes, specifically designed by goblin tailors to incorporate subtle elements of both wizard and goblin styling. His silver armband was visible today, a deliberate choice to establish his unique position from the outset. The door opened to admit 3 figures. The first, a distinguished-looking wizard in his 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and an immaculately trimmed beard, could only be Sebastian Delacour. Beside him stood a breathtakingly beautiful woman with silvery blonde hair and an ethereal quality that subtly affected the room's atmosphere, Apollon Delacour, half Vila by reputation. The third figure immediately captured Harry's attention. Fleur Delacour appeared about 16, with the same silvery blonde hair as her mother, arranged in an elegant twist. Her features combined aristocratic refinement with otherworldly beauty, though her expression conveyed serious intelligence rather than mere physical attractiveness. She wore formal blue robes of French design, with a silver pin at her shoulder bearing what Harry recognized as the Delacour family crest. Nagnok performed the introductions with formal goblin precision. Lord and Lady Delacour, Mademoiselle Delacour, may I present Harry Potter, Supreme Overlord of the Goblin Nation by blood right and magic. Sebastian Delacour stepped forward, extending his hand in the wizard fashion while simultaneously offering a subtle half-bow that acknowledged goblin custom. A pleasure, Mr. Potter. Your reputation precedes you, in multiple worlds. Harry shook his hand. Thank you for coming, Lord Delacour. I hope our meeting proves productive for all parties. Please, call me Sebastian, the older wizard replied with a warm smile. Formality has its place, but practical alliance requires a more direct approach, no? Apollon Delacour stepped forward next, her movement graceful as flowing water. Mr. Potter, she greeted, her accent more pronounced than her husband's. We have long been curious about the boy who bridges worlds. When Harry turned to greet Fleur, she assessed him with clear, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, not the silver armband, nor the goblin-made dagger partially visible at his belt, nor the scars visible on his hand from years of training. Mademoiselle Delacour, he said, offering the formal greeting in perfect French. Her eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. Your accent is excellent, Mr. Potter, she replied in the same language. Did your goblin mentors teach you? Among other subjects, Harry confirmed, switching back to English for the benefit of the others. I understand you wish to participate in the upcoming summit. Direct, but not impolite. Fleur seemed to appreciate the approach. I do. My position as heir requires practical diplomatic experience, not merely theoretical knowledge. Her English flowed smoothly despite the French accent. Additionally, I have certain insights regarding the intersection of different magical traditions that may prove relevant to the summit's aims. The meeting progressed to a private dining room, where goblin hospitality provided an elegant meal while they discussed the summit's parameters. Throughout the conversation, Harry observed Fleur carefully. Despite her youth, she contributed thoughtful perspectives on European magical politics and demonstrated surprising knowledge of goblin customs, never interrupting, using appropriate honorifics, and even properly handling goblin-made utensils with the respect their craftsmanship deserved. After the meal, Sebastian and Apollon departed with Nagnok to discuss financial arrangements, leaving Harry alone with Fleur in the adjacent sitting room. This, he realized, was deliberately orchestrated, an opportunity to assess her without parental oversight. Your parents are quite progressive by wizard standards, Harry observed, accepting the goblin-brewed tea a bank attendant provided before withdrawing. Fleur smiled faintly. By British standards, perhaps. In France, cooperation between magical communities has practical benefits recognized even by traditionalists. She studied him over her teacup. Though I admit, your position is unique even by continental standards. Supreme Overlord is a title I had believed extinct. As did most goblins, until circumstances revived it, Harry replied. May I ask what specifically interests you about the summit? Beyond general diplomatic experience. Fleur set down her cup, expression growing serious. My grandmother, my Vila grandmother, has been experiencing visions. Disturbing ones, involving corrupted metal and fractured souls. Her blue eyes fixed on Harry's. She believes ancient magic is stirring, magic that threatens all magical beings, not just wizards. Harry's interest sharpened. These visions, how long have they been occurring? Since last winter, growing more frequent and detailed. The most recent included a ritual involving blood, bone, and flesh. She hesitated. And a goblin forge corrupted by dark wizard magic. The description aligned perfectly with the evidence Nagnok's investigators had assembled, the human remains, the targeting of goblin metalworking knowledge, the timing. Your grandmother's visions correspond with intelligence we've gathered, Harry acknowledged. We believe Voldemort's followers are preparing for his return in physical form, using corrupted goblin metallurgy to create a body resistant to conventional magical damage. Fleur didn't flinch at Voldemort's name, refreshing compared to most British wizards. Then we share the same concern. The Vila communities have their own reasons to fear his return. During the last war, he attempted to enslave Vila for their magical properties. Harry nodded grimly. The summit aims to create a unified response across goblin clans. Having Vila representation through your family would strengthen our position considerably. And my presence specifically? Fleur asked directly. Do you believe I would be an asset or liability? Harry appreciated her directness. Based on our interaction today, an asset. You understand the protocols, you're knowledgeable about the issues, and your Vila heritage provides a natural bridge between communities. She smiled, seemingly pleased by his assessment. Then I look forward to working with you, Supreme Overlord Potter. Harry, he corrected. If we're to be allies. Harry, she agreed. And I am Fleur, of course. As they rejoined the others to finalize arrangements, Harry felt cautiously optimistic. The Delacours seemed genuine in their concerns and valuable in their connections. Fleur, in particular, impressed him with her combination of intelligence, magical heritage, and diplomatic instinct. The summit was scheduled for the Christmas holidays, allowing Harry to attend without arousing suspicion at Hogwarts. As preparations continued, he would need to balance his school responsibilities, ongoing goblin training, patronus lessons with Lupin, and now correspondence with Fleur regarding summit coordination. All while a mass murderer supposedly hunted him and Voldemort's followers advanced their plans. Third year was proving even more complicated than anticipated. November brought intensifying Dementor activity around Hogwarts, with the creatures seemingly drawn to Harry despite Dumbledore's strict limitations on their movements. During a particularly disastrous Quidditch match against Hufflepuff, nearly 100 Dementors invaded the pitch, causing Harry to fall 50 feet from his broom before Dumbledore's intervention saved him. The incident accelerated Harry's Patronus training with Professor Lupin, who now treated the lessons as urgent rather than merely educational. Focus on your happiest memory, Lupin instructed during a session in his office. The Patronus charm channels positive emotion into a protective force. Harry concentrated, trying various recollections, winning his first Quidditch match, discovering he was a wizard, moments with Ron and Hermione. Each produced silver vapor but nothing substantial. It's not working properly, Harry said, frustrated after another failed attempt. Lupin studied him thoughtfully. The memories you're choosing might not be powerful enough. The Patronus requires truly profound happiness. Harry hesitated, then decided to try something different. He focused on the moment Nagnok had first called him Supreme Overlord, the sense of belonging, of finding his place between worlds, of having a purpose beyond mere survival. Expecto Patronum. Silver light erupted from his wand, coalescing into a large, four-legged animal that bounded around the office. Not a stag as Lupin seemed to expect from his startled expression, but a powerful silver griffin, part eagle, part lion, its form perfectly reflecting Harry's dual magical heritage. Extraordinary, Lupin whispered as the Patronus faded. I've rarely seen one so fully formed on a student's early attempts. Harry lowered his wand, both pleased and thoughtful. The Griffin Patronus represented a merging of his identities, the wizard and the goblin-trained warrior, more perfectly than he had anticipated. Professor, Harry asked carefully, did you know my parents well? Lupin's expression shifted, sadness briefly overwhelming his features before he composed himself. Yes, Harry. James was one of my dearest friends at Hogwarts. Lily too, though we became closer after they married. This confirmed Harry's suspicions. Lupin's occasional slips, calling Harry by his first name when other professors maintained formality, his wistful expressions when Harry mastered a spell, his detailed knowledge of James Potter's school days, all pointed to a personal connection. And Sirius Black? Harry pressed. Was he their friend too? Lupin stiffened. Who told you that? No one directly, Harry admitted. But I've been piecing things together. The way people avoid mentioning him around me, how personally he seems to have taken my parents' deaths." The professor sank into his chair, suddenly looking much older than his years. "Yes, Harry. Sirius was your father's best friend, his closest confidant. He was even named your godfather." Though Harry had suspected as much, the confirmation still landed like a physical blow. "And he betrayed them to Voldemort." "That's what the evidence suggested," Lupin said, his tone carefully neutral. "Sirius was their secret keeper, the only person who could reveal their location while they were hiding under the Fidelius charm." Something in Lupin's phrasing caught Harry's attention. "Evidence suggested? You have doubts?" Lupin hesitated, visibly conflicted. "I shouldn't be discussing this with you." Dumbledore keeps many secrets," Harry interrupted. "Some necessary, others merely convenient. If Black is hunting me specifically, don't I deserve the whole truth?" The directness of this appeal seemed to reach Lupin. He sighed deeply. "The truth, Harry, is that I've been struggling to reconcile the Sirius I knew, who would have died for James and Lily, with the traitor he apparently became. Nothing about it made sense to me then, and 13 years of reflection haven't clarified matters." "What happened after my parents died?" Harry asked. "The night Black was captured. He confronted Peter Pettigrew, another of our friends, on a Muggle street. There was an explosion. Peter and 12 Muggles died. Only Peter's finger was found." Lupin's voice had gone flat, reciting facts that still clearly pained him. "Sirius was laughing when they arrested him. Unhinged with grief or guilt or madness, no one could say." Harry processed this. Something about the story felt incomplete. His goblin training had taught him to look beyond accepted narratives, to question convenient explanations. Was there a trial? Testimony under veritaserum? Lupin blinked, surprised by the question. No. Those were chaotic days. Many Death Eaters were sentenced without full trials, the evidence seemed overwhelming, and the Ministry wanted to show strength after Voldemort's fall. No trial. No magical verification of guilt. Just circumstantial evidence and the convenient narrative of a best friend turned traitor. "Thank you for telling me, Professor," Harry said. "It helps to understand the full context." Lupin studied him with concern. "Harry, please don't do anything rash. Black is dangerous, regardless of the past." "I understand," Harry assured him. "I'm just trying to put the pieces together." Their lesson concluded shortly thereafter, but Harry's mind continued processing the new information as he returned to Gryffindor Tower. He would need to investigate further, perhaps through goblin channels, which often contained records wizard authorities overlooked. As Christmas approached, bringing the Goblin Summit with it, Harry found himself balancing multiple complex situations: the Black Mystery, the growing evidence of Voldemort's return preparations, and the delicate diplomacy required to unite traditionally isolated goblin clans. Through it all, he maintained regular correspondence with Fleur Delacour, whose insights into continental magical politics proved invaluable as they prepared for the summit. Their letters evolved from formal diplomatic exchanges to thoughtful discussions of magical theory, cultural differences between Britain and France, and occasionally more personal reflections on the challenges of straddling different magical communities. By mid-December, Harry had arranged his absence from Hogwarts for the holidays. Officially, he would be staying with a distant relative recently discovered through Gringotts inheritance testing, a cover story the goblins had carefully constructed with documentation that would satisfy casual inquiry. The summit would take place in neutral territory, an ancient goblin conclave beneath the Swiss Alps that had historically served as meeting grounds for clans across Europe. Final preparations were underway when Harry received an unexpected owl from Fleur the week before departure. "Harry, urgent development. My grandmother's visions have intensified. She now sees specific elements of the ritual intended for the Dark Lord's resurrection, including the required sacrifice from an enemy. I believe you are the intended source. Additionally, our contacts in Eastern Europe report increased activity around Durmstrang Institute, where several known sympathizers hold teaching positions. We suspect recruitment efforts targeting students with connections to ancient artifacts. Most concerning, rumors have reached us about a tournament being planned between the 3 major European magical schools for next academic year. If true, this could provide cover for infiltration of Hogwarts by foreign agents under legitimate pretexts. We should discuss these matters privately before the main summit proceedings. I will arrive 2 days early at the Swiss location to allow for this. With concern, Harry immediately shared this intelligence with Nagnok, who confirmed several elements through goblin sources. The timing aligned perfectly. A major inter-school tournament would provide multiple opportunities for Voldemort's agents to access Hogwarts, while simultaneously creating public spectacle to distract attention from darker activities. The final week of term passed in a blur of exams, last-minute arrangements, and careful information gathering. Harry had tasked Hermione, without explaining his full reasons, with researching magical tournaments historically held between wizarding schools. Her findings confirmed that the Triwizard Tournament had once been a regular event before being discontinued due to the death toll. It hasn't been held in over a century, she reported. But there have been occasional discussions about reviving it with safer parameters. On the last evening before departure, Harry visited Professor Flitwick's office to finalize details for their cover story. The Charms professor would officially escort Harry to meet his fabricated relative, providing legitimate cover for leaving school grounds. Be careful at this summit, Harry, Flitwick advised quietly. Goblin politics can be as deadly as their blades when multiple clans gather. I know, Harry assured him. But the risk is necessary given what we're facing. Flitwick nodded, then hesitated before adding, Dumbledore has been asking questions about your summer activities. Nothing direct, but he's clearly puzzled by certain inconsistencies. Such as? The blood wards around your aunt's home should have registered your presence for the Ministry's monitoring charms. Apparently, they showed only sporadic activation. Harry considered this implication. The blood protection his mother had left theoretically required his residence with Petunia to maintain, yet another detail Dumbledore had never personally explained to him. What did you tell him? Harry asked. Nothing of consequence, Flitwick replied with a slight smile. My loyalty to Goblin confidentiality predates my employment at Hogwarts. With final arrangements complete, Harry packed his trunk with both school supplies and the formal Goblin regalia he would need for the summit. Hidden in a specially warded compartment lay his ceremonial weapons and the ancient texts Nagnok had provided regarding the Founder's Forge, knowledge he would need to properly address the summit's central concern. As Harry drifted to sleep that night, his thoughts turned to the complex path ahead. The Goblin Summit would be challenging enough, but Fleur's warning about the tournament suggested next year might prove even more dangerous. If Voldemort's followers were indeed planning his resurrection with Harry as an ingredient, time was running short to prepare adequate defenses. Yet despite the gravity of these concerns, Harry felt a strange anticipation about seeing Fleur again. Their correspondence had revealed a kindred spirit, someone else who understood living between magical worlds, navigating complex political landscapes, and balancing personal identity with public responsibility. An ally, certainly. Perhaps eventually a friend. And maybe, something more. The hidden conclave beneath the Swiss Alps took Harry's breath away. Unlike the functional practicality of Gringotts' working areas, this ancient meeting place combined goblin craftsmanship with natural wonder. The main chamber had been carved from a massive natural cavern, its ceiling studded with luminous crystals that mimicked the stars above the mountain. Terraced seating surrounded a central speaking platform, with separate areas designated for each major clan's representatives. Harry arrived 2 days before the main proceedings, accompanied by Nagnok, Griphook, and Silveraxe. Their quarters, a suite of rooms carved into the cavern wall, balanced comfort with traditional goblin aesthetics, practical furnishings crafted with extraordinary skill, metals and stones used in perfect harmony. The Delacour heir arrived yesterday, Griphook informed him as they settled in. She requested a meeting at your earliest convenience. Where is she staying? Harry asked. The Eastern guest quarters, traditionally reserved for non-goblin allies. Griphook's expression revealed mild surprise. She specifically requested the Vila-adapted chambers rather than the standard wizard accommodations. Interesting. Another statement of her dual heritage, positioning herself as neither purely wizard nor creature, but something distinct. Harry was beginning to appreciate Fleur's subtle diplomatic instincts. After refreshing himself from the journey, Harry made his way through the conclave's winding passages to the eastern chambers. Goblin guards nodded respectfully as he passed, the silver armband and supreme Overlord signet ring openly displayed now that he was among those who recognized their significance. Fleur answered his knock immediately, as though she'd been waiting. She wore semi-formal robes in periwinkle blue, her silver blonde hair cascading freely down her back rather than in the formal arrangement from their previous meeting. "Harry," she greeted warmly. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "Your message sounded urgent," he replied. "And I was curious about these Vila-adapted chambers Griphook mentioned." Fleur smiled, gesturing him inside. "They're designed for comfort across multiple magical signatures. Observe." The room featured subtle differences from standard quarters, slightly higher ceilings, environmental enchantments that created a pleasant warmth, and most notably, decorative elements incorporating feather motifs and dancing flames. "Vila are creatures of air and fire," Fleur explained. "These chambers acknowledge that heritage. The goblins created them centuries ago, when alliances between our peoples were more common." "They're beautiful," Harry acknowledged. "Practical yet respectful of difference. Exactly what we need more of in the magical world," Fleur agreed. She indicated a seating area near a softly glowing hearth. "Please, make yourself comfortable. We have much to discuss before the others arrive." Once seated, Fleur retrieved a thin leather portfolio. "My grandmother provided these sketches based on her visions. They may help identify what Voldemort's followers seek." The drawings inside showed various ritual components, a massive cauldron inscribed with runes Harry recognized as predating standard wizard magic, human remains arranged in specific patterns, and most disturbing, a diagram of what appeared to be a hybrid forge combining goblin metallurgical elements with dark wizard modifications. "The ritual requires 3 primary components," Fleur continued. "Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, and blood of the enemy. The blood must be taken forcibly, and the enemy must be one who has previously defeated the Dark Lord." "Me," Harry concluded grimly. "Yes. But the ritual alone isn't sufficient. A temporary homunculus must first be created to house his fragmented soul, then transformed through the ritual into a permanent body." She tapped the forge diagram. "That's where goblin metallurgy becomes crucial. Only a body forged with these techniques could withstand the magical stresses of housing a soul so damaged by multiple fragmentations." Harry frowned. "Multiple fragmentations? You mean he split his soul more than once?" Fleur's eyes widened slightly. "You know about soul splitting? About Horcruxes?" "Not by that name," Harry admitted. "But goblin records describe similar dark magic, vessels containing soul fragments that anchor a wizard to the mortal realm." "Horcruxes are the wizard term," Fleur confirmed. "My grandmother believes Voldemort created several. It explains his survival when his killing curse rebounded from you." This aligned with theories Elder Garrick had shared during Harry's metaphysical training. The goblin teacher had suspected something tethering Voldemort's spirit to the material world but lacked specific evidence. If he created multiple Horcruxes, killing him becomes significantly more complex, Harry noted. Each would need to be destroyed before he could truly die. "Exactly," Fleur agreed. "But first, we must prevent his resurrection into a goblin-forged body. Such a vessel would be nearly invulnerable to standard magical attack." They spent the next several hours analyzing the vision sketches and comparing them with Harry's knowledge of goblin metallurgy. By midnight, they had identified several critical components the resurrection ritual would require: rare minerals, specific goblin tools, and most importantly, access to a forge built on ley line intersections. "There are only 7 such forges in existence," Harry explained, marking locations on a map of Europe. 5 within Gringotts branches, one in the abandoned goblin stronghold in Germany's Black Forest, and one. The Founder's Forge, Fleur finished. The original, and most powerful. Harry nodded. Its location remains the most closely guarded goblin secret. If Voldemort's followers are targeting it specifically rather than one of the known forges, they must have obtained inside information. A traitor within the Goblin Nation? Possibly. Or coercion. Harry frowned, recalling the corrupted listening stones found in Gringotts. Either way, protecting the forge becomes our highest priority. As their discussion continued into the early morning hours, the complexity of their task became increasingly apparent. They weren't merely facing a single threat but coordinated actions across multiple fronts: ministry pressure on goblin affairs, Voldemort's resurrection plans, and potentially compromised security within magical institutions including Hogwarts itself. When they finally concluded, exhaustion evident in both their faces, Fleur touched Harry's arm gently. "We make a good team, I think," she said. "Your goblin knowledge complements my grandmother's visions perfectly." Harry smiled, surprised by how comfortable he felt in her presence despite the seriousness of their discussion. "I agree. Your perspective helps me see connections I might have missed." "Then we present united at the summit," she decided. "The Supreme Overlord and the Vila heir, bridging multiple magical communities against a common threat." "That should give even Ragnar Bloodfist something to think about," Harry agreed. As he returned to his chambers, Harry reflected on this unexpected alliance. Fleur Delacour was proving to be not just a valuable diplomatic connection but a true partner in addressing the gathering darkness. Her intelligence, magical heritage, and diplomatic training combined to create someone who understood the complexities he navigated daily. For the first time since accepting the Supreme Overlord mantle, Harry felt he'd found someone who truly comprehended the weight of standing between worlds, someone who shared that burden in her own way. The summit would begin tomorrow, bringing together goblin clans that had been rivals for centuries. With Fleur at his side, Harry felt cautiously optimistic about their chances of forging the necessary alliance to protect the magical world from Voldemort's return. Whether that alliance would be sufficient to prevent the darkness Fleur's grandmother had foreseen remained to be seen. The summit's opening ceremony demonstrated goblin formality at its most impressive. Clan leaders in full ceremonial armor processed into the great chamber, each accompanied by their chosen advisors and guard captains. Banners bearing ancient clan insignias hung from the cavern walls, some dating back to goblin rebellions that predated Hogwarts itself. Harry took his position on the speaking platform, dressed in the formal regalia of the Supreme Overlord, silver-inlaid armor over midnight blue robes, the armband prominently displayed, and ceremonial weapons at his belt. Beside him stood Nagnok representing the Garthel clan, and on his left, Fleur Delacour as the Vila representative. Fleur wore formal robes of silvery gray that complemented her coloring perfectly, with subtle feather motifs woven into the fabric. A circlet of white gold rested on her silver blonde hair, marking her status as heir to her family's traditions. As the last delegation, the Bloodfists, took their places, Harry stepped forward to address the assembled clans. The chamber fell silent, hundreds of goblin eyes fixed upon the human who claimed their highest ceremonial title. Honored clan leaders, distinguished representatives, Harry began in flawless gobbledygook, his voice magically amplified to reach the furthest seats. "I welcome you to this historic gathering. For too long, goblin clans have addressed threats in isolation, each protecting their own interests while common enemies grow stronger." He paused, allowing his gaze to sweep the chamber, making brief eye contact with key figures including Ragnar Bloodfist, whose expression remained impassive but attentive. "Today, we face dangers that threaten all magical beings, goblin, wizard, Vila, and others. Dark magic stirs that would corrupt the very foundations of goblin craft. Ministry regulations seek to strip our artifacts of proper protection. And behind both, the shadow of Voldemort grows, seeking return through perversion of our sacred metallurgy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd at the direct naming of the Dark Lord, but Harry continued undeterred. "As Supreme Overlord, I stand at the intersection of our worlds, neither fully goblin nor merely wizard, but a bridge between traditions. Today, I ask not for your allegiance to me personally, but for unity among all clans against these common threats. Harry outlined the evidence they had gathered, the corrupted artifacts found in Gringotts, the targeting of goblin forges, the ritual components identified through Vila visions, and the ministry's suspicious focus on goblin-made items. When he concluded, Ragnar Bloodfist rose from his seat, commanding immediate attention. The Supreme Overlord speaks with wisdom beyond his years, the scarred goblin acknowledged. The Bloodfist clan recognizes these threats. However, we question whether unity requires centralized control. Each clan has protected its own interests for centuries without human oversight. Before Harry could respond, Fleur stepped forward. Protocol suggested she should wait to be recognized, but her deliberate breach of formality created exactly the dramatic moment needed to capture attention. With respect, Ambassador Ragnar, she said in perfect gobbledygook, surprising many who hadn't expected a wizard, even one with Vila blood, to master their language. This is precisely the thinking Voldemort's followers anticipate. Divided clans, each protecting their individual interests, create vulnerabilities in the whole. She activated a magical display in the center of the chamber, a three-dimensional representation of goblin territories across Europe, with pulsing red lights indicating known infiltration attempts. These attacks are coordinated, she continued. Each probes different defenses, testing for weaknesses. Isolated responses have proven insufficient, as evidenced by successful penetration of even Gringotts' deepest vaults. Ragnar's eyes narrowed, but he seemed more intrigued than offended by her intervention. And you suggest the Vila communities would join this proposed alliance? Despite centuries of limited interaction with goblin clans? We would, Fleur confirmed. My grandmother's visions indicate this threat transcends traditional boundaries. If Voldemort returns in a goblin-forged body, resistant to conventional magic, all magical beings face subjugation, not merely wizards. The debate continued for hours, with clan representatives raising concerns, questioning evidence, and proposing various approaches. Throughout, Harry and Fleur worked in subtle coordination, she addressing wizard-focused issues while he handled goblin-specific concerns, each supporting the other's authority without undermining their own. By evening, the summit had progressed from skepticism to cautious engagement. Working groups formed to address specific aspects of the threat: forge security, artifact protection, intelligence gathering, and diplomatic outreach to other magical communities. Most significantly, Ragnar Bloodfist had shifted from opposition to critical support. After a particularly heated exchange regarding ministry regulations, the scarred ambassador had unexpectedly aligned with Harry's position. The Supreme Overlord's dual nature, which I once considered his greatest weakness, may prove our greatest asset in this conflict, Ragnar conceded publicly. He moves between worlds in ways pure goblins cannot. As the first day's formal proceedings concluded, Harry and Fleur retreated to a private strategy room with Nagnok and key allies from various clans. Better progress than I anticipated, Nagnok admitted, removing his ceremonial helmet with evident relief. Particularly with the Bloodfists. Ragnar is no fool, Harry noted. He recognizes genuine threats when presented with sufficient evidence. And responds to strength, added Silveraxe, who had remained silent during the public proceedings but watched everything with tactical assessment. Your combat victory over Gornik earned his basic respect, but today's command of the chamber secured his support. Fleur, reviewing notes from the session, looked up. We still face significant challenges. The German clans remain hesitant, and several British representatives seem concerned about ministry retaliation if cooperation becomes too obvious. Valid concerns, Harry acknowledged. Which is why tomorrow we must address specific protections for participants. The planning continued late into the night. When most advisors had departed, leaving only Harry, Fleur, and Nagnok, the Goblin King raised an additional concern. There's still the matter of the Triwizard Tournament, he said. If Fleur's information proves correct and the competition resumes next year, it creates both risk and opportunity. Harry nodded. An opportunity to place trusted observers at Hogwarts under legitimate cover. Precisely. Nagnok turned to Fleur. Would Bosbaden's champion selection process be influenceable? Fleur raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting I should ensure my selection as champion? It would place a knowledgeable ally at Hogwarts, Harry pointed out. Someone already aware of the true threats, with connections to both Goblin and Vila intelligence networks. I had already considered it, Fleur admitted. Though the selection involves magical binding contracts that cannot be circumvented through mere influence. I would need to be legitimately worthy by whatever criteria the selector uses. Given your abilities, that seems achievable, Harry said with a smile. Fleur returned the smile with a hint of competitive fire in her eyes. I shall certainly try. And you? Would you enter this tournament if it comes to Hogwarts? Absolutely not, Harry replied firmly. I have enough attention as the boy who lived without seeking more through a tournament. Besides, my role will be more effective working behind the scenes. Nagnok nodded approval. Wise. The Supreme Overlord should remain free from magical contracts that might limit his movement between Goblin and Wizard territories. As their meeting concluded, Harry walked Fleur back toward her chambers. The conclave's passages were quiet at this late hour, most delegates having retired to prepare for tomorrow's intensive negotiations. You were impressive today, Harry told her. Your intervention with Ragnar changed the entire chamber's dynamic. As was your opening address, she replied. You balance authority with respect in a way few can manage, especially at your age. They paused at an observation balcony overlooking a spectacular underground lake, its dark waters reflecting the luminous crystals overhead like a mirror of stars. Sometimes I forget how beautiful Goblin territories can be, Harry remarked. Most wizards never see beyond the functional areas of Gringotts. Their loss, Fleur said softly. Beauty exists in many forms overlooked by those with limited perspective. Her gaze met his, and Harry became acutely aware of how close they stood. Though only 3 years separated them, Fleur carried herself with a maturity that made such distinctions meaningless. In the crystalline light, her features held an otherworldly quality that reminded him of her Vila heritage, not merely physical beauty but something more profound, a connection to ancient magic. The moment stretched between them, neither advancing nor retreating, until voices echoed from a connecting passage, delegates from the Swiss clans returning late from private discussions. We should rest, Fleur said, though she seemed reluctant to end their conversation. Tomorrow requires clear minds. Of course, Harry agreed. Good night, Fleur. Good night, Supreme Overlord, she replied with the faintest smile, the formality somehow more personal than his name would have been. As Harry returned to his chambers, he found himself contemplating their connection. Beyond their shared diplomatic goals and the practical alliance between their communities, he felt drawn to her in ways that transcended politics. Her intelligence, confidence, and understanding of his complex position created a foundation for something he'd experienced with few others, true recognition of all aspects of his identity. Whether this connection might develop further remained to be seen. For now, they had a summit to complete, alliances to forge, and dark forces to counter. The future, personal and political, would unfold in its own time. Spring term at Hogwarts brought new complications. The summit had concluded successfully, establishing unprecedented cooperation between Goblin clans and laying groundwork for expanded alliances with other magical communities. But implementing those agreements while maintaining his cover as an ordinary Hogwarts student stretched Harry's abilities to their limits. His patronus lessons with Professor Lupin continued, providing a legitimate excuse for some of his extra activities. The Griffin Patronus had strengthened considerably, now capable of driving away multiple Dementors simultaneously. More intriguingly, Harry had discovered he could modify the spell using goblin channeling techniques through his armband, creating a Patronus with unique properties, visible only to specific observers and capable of carrying messages across defensive wards. This modification proved invaluable for secure communication with Fleur, who had returned to Beauxbatons but remained actively involved in their joint preparations. Her letters, delivered through conventional owl post, contained nothing suspicious, while the real intelligence passed through patronus messages exchanged weekly. Meanwhile, Sirius Black remained at large, though Dementor patrols had intensified following a breach of Hogwarts security that led directly to Ron's bed. The incident made little sense if Black truly sought Harry, raising further questions about the escaped prisoner's actual motives. Harry had discreetly tasked Griphook with investigating Black's case through Goblin records, which often contained information missing from Ministry accounts. The results proved fascinating. Transaction records showed the Black family vault had never been frozen or redistributed after Sirius's imprisonment, contrary to standard procedure for convicted Death Eaters. More tellingly, the magical signature verification system Gringotts used indicated Black had never borne the Dark Mark, the magical brand Voldemort placed on all his followers. These discrepancies strengthened Harry's suspicion that Black's conviction might have been expedient rather than justified. However, approaching an escaped convict for clarification presented obvious risks, particularly with Dementors surrounding the school. As April arrived, bringing preparations for end-of-year exams, Harry received urgent news through multiple channels. Fleur's Patronus message arrived first, a silver hawk that manifested in his dormitory during a rare moment of privacy. Tournament confirmed for next year, it reported in her voice. Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students will arrive at Hogwarts in October. Champions selected at Halloween. I have positioned myself for selection through academic and magical accomplishments. Warning, Igor Karkaroff, former Death Eater, remains Durmstrang headmaster and will accompany their delegation. The following day, an official-looking owl delivered a sealed parchment bearing the Gringotts emblem, a routine account statement to casual observers, but containing encoded information about Ministry movements. Internal sources confirmed tournament approval at highest levels. Departments of International Magical Cooperation and Magical Games and Sports coordinating. Bagman and Crouch leading organization. Recommend heightened vigilance regarding artifact security during international event. Most alarmingly, Professor Flitwick requested a private meeting after Charms class, drawing Harry into his office with uncharacteristic seriousness. Dumbledore has received Ministry confirmation about next year's event, the part-goblin professor informed him quietly. The Triwizard Tournament will indeed be revived, with Hogwarts hosting. More concerning, certain magical artifacts will be required for the selection process and tournament tasks, including items with connections to the founders. The mention of founder artifacts immediately raised red flags. Harry had learned during the summit that Voldemort's followers had particular interest in objects connected to Hogwarts creators, items that often contained unique magical properties that might serve ritual purposes. Which artifacts specifically? Harry asked. The Goblet of Fire will select the champions, Flitwick replied. But various task components remain under discussion. Dumbledore seems unusually agreeable to Ministry suggestions. This suggested either extraordinary trust or potential magical influence, neither scenario reassuring given the circumstances. As examinations approached, Harry balanced academic preparation with strategic planning. Regular updates from Goblin sources confirmed increased activity around known Death Eater families, particularly the Malfoys. Lucius Malfoy had significantly increased his Ministry visits, meeting frequently with department heads involved in tournament planning. One bright development came through Professor Lupin, who had begun subtly sharing information about Harry's parents that went beyond standard reminiscence. During their final Patronus session before exams, the defense professor revealed something particularly significant. Your father and his friends became animagi during their time at Hogwarts, Lupin explained. Unregistered, of course, which was highly illegal. Animagi? Harry repeated, genuinely surprised. That's incredibly advanced magic. Why would they undertake something so difficult and risky as students? Lupin hesitated, then sighed. For me, actually. I'm a werewolf, Harry. Your father, Sirius, and Peter became animagi to keep me company during full moons, when I transformed. Animals aren't affected by werewolf bites, you see. The revelation explained much, Lupin's monthly illnesses, his worn appearance, Snape's apparent hatred of him. But more importantly, it provided crucial context about Sirius Black. So Black could transform into an animal? Harry asked. That might explain how he's evaded capture. A large black dog, Lupin confirmed. I've wondered the same thing myself. The Ministry doesn't know about his ability, which gives him a significant advantage. This information, combined with the Goblin records questioning Black's Death Eater status, painted an increasingly complex picture. If Black was innocent of betraying Harry's parents, who was actually responsible? And what was his true purpose in approaching Hogwarts repeatedly? The answer came in an unexpected and dramatic fashion during the final week of term. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had visited Hagrid to console him over Buckbeak's scheduled execution, a travesty orchestrated by Lucius Malfoy's Ministry influence. While returning to the castle, Ron's pet rat Scabbers, recently recovered after a prolonged disappearance, went berserk, biting Ron and fleeing toward the Whomping Willow. In the chaos that followed, a massive black dog dragged Ron into a hidden passage beneath the violent tree. Harry and Hermione pursued them to the Shrieking Shack, where they discovered the dog was indeed Sirius Black in his animagus form. Before Harry could decide how to respond to this confrontation, Professor Lupin arrived, having seen their movements on a magical map he'd confiscated from Harry earlier in the year. What followed was a revelation that validated Harry's suspicions. Peter Pettigrew, supposedly murdered by Black, had been living as Ron's rat for 12 years. Forced back into human form by combined spellwork from Black and Lupin, the sniveling man confessed to betraying the Potters and framing Sirius. I was your father's best friend, Black told Harry, his gaunt face transformed by emotional intensity. I would have died before betraying James and Lily. When I discovered Peter's treachery, I went after him myself instead of waiting for the authorities. It was my greatest mistake. The evening culminated in catastrophe when Professor Snape's intervention and Lupin's transformation under the full moon allowed Pettigrew to escape. Despite Harry and Hermione's desperate efforts using a time-turner to alter events, they managed only to save Buckbeak and help Sirius escape recapture by the Dementors. Before departing on the rescued Hippogriff, Sirius had pulled Harry aside. Your parents named me your godfather, he said urgently. Once my name is cleared, if you wanted a different home. The offer, to live with someone who had genuinely cared for his parents, who understood their world, touched Harry deeply. Yet his life had grown far more complex than Sirius could possibly understand. The Supreme Overlord responsibilities, the Goblin training, the preparations against Voldemort's return, none of these could be explained in a few hurried moments. That would be great, Harry had replied sincerely. But there's a lot you don't know about my situation. Things I can't explain now. Sirius had studied him with surprising perception. You've got secrets, Harry. I can see that. More than a typical 13-year-old should carry. He squeezed Harry's shoulder. When I'm free, when it's safe, we'll talk properly. Whatever you're involved in, you shouldn't face it alone. With that limited promise, Sirius had departed, leaving Harry to return to the castle and face the consequences of a night that had answered some questions while raising many more. Now, on the Hogwarts Express returning to London, Harry reflected on the year's developments. The Goblin Alliance had strengthened considerably through the summit. Fleur Delacour had proven herself a valuable ally and potential friend. The mystery of Sirius Black had been partially resolved, revealing a godfather rather than a threat. Yet looming ahead lay the Triwizard Tournament, almost certainly a cover for Voldemort's supporters to implement their resurrection plans. Harry's compartment door slid open, revealing Daphne Greengrass. Their alliance had continued throughout the year, primarily through library meetings where they exchanged carefully curated information while maintaining the appearance of interhouse study partners. A moment of your time, Potter? She asked formally, conscious of Ron and Hermione's presence. Of course, Harry replied, following her into the corridor. Once they'd found a quiet spot between carriages, Daphne spoke in a low voice. Father sent confirmation. Lucius Malfoy has been meeting privately with Bartemius Crouch on tournament specifics. They're planning something for the third task. Do we know what? Not yet. But it involves transportation beyond Hogwarts boundaries. She glanced around to ensure their privacy. Also, the goblins sent this through Father's private account manager. She handed him a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. It's a communication mirror, she explained. Untraceable, according to their note. For use during the coming months when you might be under observation. Harry nodded gratefully. Thank your father for me. And for all your help this year. Daphne's cool facade softened slightly. We purebloods aren't all like Malfoy, you know. Some of us understand the value of broader alliances. I never doubted that, Harry assured her. As they prepared to return to their respective compartments, Daphne added, be careful this summer, Potter. Father says something big is planned for August, some large wizard gathering where certain elements intend to make a statement. The Quidditch World Cup, Harry realized. The Weasleys have invited me to attend with them. Then watch your back, Daphne advised. And perhaps brush up on your shield charms before attending. The warning added another layer of concern to Harry's already complex summer plans. Between continued goblin training, coordination with Fleur on tournament preparations, and now potential danger at the World Cup, his vacation would be anything but restful. As the Hogwarts Express pulled into King's Cross Station, Harry mentally reviewed his priorities for the coming months. He would need to balance maintaining his cover as an ordinary student with his responsibilities as Supreme Overlord and the growing threat of Voldemort's return. Fourth year promised to be his most dangerous yet, but also, perhaps, his most defining. The skills, alliances, and knowledge he had accumulated across both his worlds would soon be tested in ways he could only begin to anticipate. Harry stepped off the train, ready to face whatever came next. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.